Recording in progress.
I would now like to call the City Council work session meeting to order, 6:02. I would like to call on Heather Richards, Community Development Director, and Derek Worf, County Assessor, to present our topic on tax assessments in Yamhill County.
Yes, so thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. As we were going through the process of selecting a developer for the Northwest Rubber site, you had many questions relative to how properties are assessed in the urban renewal area, especially as they change ownership between private and public ownership back and forth in that regards, and their impact on the frozen base. And then as we were going through the budget process, you also had additional questions about how properties are assessed in McMinnville in a variety of unique situations. So we reached out to Derek Worf, the Yamhill County Tax Assessor. He's been a great partner over the years in terms of being available and responsive to us in terms of the questions we have. I find that he explains tax assessments in a language that I can understand, which is always nice. And asked him if he'd be willing to come and do a work session with you to walk through the process that he and his team use for Yamhill County in terms of tax assessments. And then we did provide him with a series of questions that we had heard from you over the last several months relative to the projects that we're working on here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Derek so that he can lead you through that work session.
Thank you, Heather. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
That's a thumbs up. Excellent. First of all, Chair and committee, thank you for the time. We spend a lot of time out of our office doing education, so this is not a request that is abnormal out of left field. We often have to get into some of the complexities of the Oregon property tax systems when boards or councils like yourself are trying to maybe approve certain exemption types or see what they want to adopt locally, that sort of thing. So again, I welcome the outreach. I welcome the opportunity to present, and thank you, Heather, for reaching out, and your team. I will, if it's okay, I'm going to start with sharing my screen here. I'm going to send a request, it looks like. And if multiple presenters can share. Okay, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to say that. Okay, it looks like we're sharing a PowerPoint now. Is that?
Yep, we have it.
Everybody got that? Okay, so just a quick high level here. Again, my name is Derek Worf. I'm the Yamhill County Assessor and gifted the opportunity to be the tax collector and more recently a GIS coordinator director facilitating Yamhill County GIS. I did offer the opportunity for two other members of my team to join as panelists. If they're here, great. I rely on them for some day-to-day stuff. And Eileen Slater is our deputy tax collector, and Patty Lansadell is our senior management analyst. So they both focus on the tax side of things, which is really what this presentation is intended to be about. And so with that, I'll kind of get us started. So yes, Heather, I do have a series of questions that were forwarded, and I'll go through those. I've got them broken into slides. We can talk into detail about some of those very unique circumstances. Not unique to City of McMinnville by any means, but unique in that they're not ones we deal with every day. But before we get there, I'm hoping to share just a couple of quick videos that the assessors and tax collectors associations put together. We developed a series of videos actually, but there's two that are really critical when you're talking tax. And one really has to do with how we develop values, and the other is the differentiation between certain values in the tax calculation process that without understanding some of those fundamentals, I think the rest of the slideshow might just go right over your head. So I'm going to try and see if I can't switch to that. Give me 1 second, please. Okay, so hopefully you're now seeing our new county website. If you haven't seen the new version, Thankful to our IT team for putting this out. But down here in the bottom, there's a couple of understanding your taxes and understanding valuations and how they fluctuate. They're short videos. I'll play them quickly, and then we can move on from there into some of the other discussions once we have those key concepts regarding the different value components. So I'll hit play here and let me know if you don't see or hear what I'm seeing.
Derek, I don't think we can hear your audio.
Okay.
I think when you hit share screen, there should be an option to share audio as well.
Okay, let me just back out of that for a second. So down here, and let me find my share screen again. So share, and share sound. There it is. Share sound.
Claudia, on the TV, can you close the participant panel, please? Thank you.
Share Zoom windows. The button for share sound is grayed out for me. Let's see. Presenter layout. Is there a way, Claudia, to have you pull up our website and just play those two from there? Is that an easier solution, or like
Yes.
I said, I don't have the ability to. The share sound is grayed out for me. If that makes sense. They're at the bottom of the assessment and tax page, which is just under departments. Then if you go to just yamhillcounty.com or there we go.
I don't think I can share my audio either, so give me
Oh.
1 second.
Okay, well, I guess barring that, let's see if I just don't have any other options here to audio settings. Well, okay. I can see the video, but yeah, I can't hear it either. All right. Well, should we move on from that? And I'll just try to give you the narrative regarding what those videos were about.
Give me 1 second. I think we found it.
Okay. Okay.
Way. To explain this, we've
Oh, there you go.
enlisted
There you go.
Property tax fairy to tell you a story.
I have to back it up. Back it up.
Measure 50 and the 3 tax laws. Deschutes County. Those of us that live here know it's a special place, and many that visit want to move here. But if you own property in Deschutes County, you also know what crazy times it's been in the last few years regarding property values, which makes for real challenges at the assessor's office. Real market value, assessed value, maximum assessed value. You say tomato, we say tomato, but it comes out confusing all the same. I'm Scott Langton, your county assessor, and I'd like to prepare you for a crazy combination of Measure 50 and our recent real estate market value fluctuations. Please don't shoot the messenger, but some of you might be in for a bit of a surprise when you receive your property tax bill this fall. Now we've come up with a method for you to review your tax situation in a graphic way. To explain this, we've enlisted the aid of the Property Tax Fairy to tell you a story. The story of Measure 50 and the 3 tax lots.
What are you looking at? Have you never seen a property tax fairy before? Well, get comfortable and pay attention because we haven't much time. Speaking of time, that's what this story is all about. Let's fire up the property tax time machine and go back to 1997. Then, Oregon voters passed Measure 50, which was designed to limit property taxes. Measure 50 created what's called the maximum assessed value, which was the real market value of your property in 1995, less 10%. Here's an example. In 1997, the real market value of this property was $140,000. The maximum assessed value of this house was set at $126,000. Over the next 10 years or so, the real market value of this property steadily increased, but Measure 50 ensured that the maximum assessed value only increased by 3% on this home. So the owners of this property saw only minor increases in their tax bill, while they enjoyed a major increase in the real market value of the property. Then the real estate bubble burst, and the property values began to fall. Because the maximum assessed value was so far below the real market value on this property, the maximum assessed value still increased 3% annually by law. And that's why property taxes still kept going up, despite the market value going down. That's pretty straightforward, right? This homeowner enjoyed the benefit of lower taxes despite fluctuating property values. A lot of new construction has occurred in Deschutes County since then. When a house is first built, it receives its initial real market value, and also with that, its maximum assessed value. The assessed value is the lower of these and becomes the baseline for calculating your property taxes. Now here's where it gets a little tricky and becomes a job for the property tax fairy.
Because of the crazy real estate market we've been having the last few years and the ongoing effects of Measure 50, we may see some wildly different changes in the maximum assessed value of some Deschutes County properties, even if the properties are very similar to each other.
We've told you about Measure 50. Now let's illustrate the current situation. Here we have a typical subdivision in Bend. It was started in 2006, and a developer built several homes before the market started changing. As the housing market went down, it took several years to complete more homes in the subdivision. This home was completed and therefore assessed for tax purposes in 2006. At that time, the property's real market value was $280,000. Its maximum assessed value was about $120,000. The home right next to it was built in 2009. Its real market value was determined to be $200,000, and its maximum assessed value $166,000. Then, in 2012, this third house was finished. Its real market value was $190,000, and its maximum assessed value was $181,000. 3 homes, similar sizes, same location, but 3 different property tax bills. Property 1, built and assessed before the peak of the housing market, has seen a big drop in real market value. Property 2, built and assessed in 2009, has seen a little less of a drop in real market value. Property 3, built as the market bottomed out, has a completely different scenario. 3 properties, similar in size, design, and location, but their tax bills will be very different. Here's where Measure 50 has worked. Property 1, whose value dropped the most, saw only the normal 3% increase in its property taxes as prescribed by Measure 50. Property 2, whose value also dropped pretty significantly, now has a real market value less than their maximum assessed value. Remember, Measure 50 says the assessed value will be the lower of the real market value and the maximum assessed value. Because of that, its assessed value became the same value as the real market value, and Property 2 actually saw a 9% decrease in its property taxes last year. Again, with Property 3, this is its first year of valuation, so there's nothing to compare it to yet.
But here's the kicker. The real estate market appears to be rebounding. And as real market values rise, the assessed value will continue to be the lower of the real market value or the maximum assessed value.
However, if the market increases by more than 3% in 1 year, and the assessed value. Back to our 3 properties again. And you can see Property 1 is the most stable and will see the anticipated 3% increase. Property 3, in its second year, will also see a 3% increase. But Property 2 is going to be surprised to see a tax increase of 14%. That's because its assessed value was pegged to its real market value. And with an value of 20%, it may come as a shock, but it's because of Measure 50, the law Oregon voters passed in 1997.
Oh dear, this can still be kind of confusing, can it? Which scenario is your property going to be in? Up, down, sideways? Well, here's where you can find out for sure.
Go to the Deschutes County Assessor's website. It's deschutes.org.
Claudia, we can stop there if you're okay with that.
There you can look up your own property and use the website to view your own cool graph. You'll see your real market value.
Okay, are we back?
Give us 1 second. I think we're
Okay.
muting mics. Okay.
Okay, so what's important there in that, one, thank you to Deschutes County, and I don't make apologies for the tax fairy. I wasn't part of that video, but what it's really trying to establish is 3 core values: the real market value, the maximum assessed value, and then what is the assessed value. So of the lower of the 2, real market and maximum assessed becomes your assessed value, which is ultimately what is taxable. And the reason that's going to come into play here as we get into slideshows is the gap between real market value and maximum assessed value on properties that have not had an exception event. So a house that was built and it's just been taxed as it goes along. That gap in the inverse of it is what establishes the CPR, or the change property ratio, for new construction in any given year. And the idea is that you're mimicking the benefit of homes that have not had new construction, that had their maximum assessed value set at some portion, since 1997. You're looking at the relationship of those existing properties to apply that same benefit to new construction. So the CPR at any given year is really driving how much of the real market value on new construction will become the maximum assessed value, and ultimately what is taxable. So a lot of questions around CPR in the upcoming slides, and I just wanted to lay out that concept of 3 values: the gap between real market value and MAV in historical properties that have not had property change establishes what's called the change property ratio. That, applied to new construction on any given year, will be the amount of that new construction that's going to go on the tax roll. So Claudia, if it's not too hard, there's one more video there. It's not quite the same length, a little bit shorter. If we could play that one, then it talks a little bit about CPR now that we've established some of the basis. It also talks about when a CPR is applied to an account and why.
I have to mute all the mics because then we get feedback when I play the video.
Why does Oregon have the most ghost towns in the nation? Oregon. We know we're one of the coolest states. An awesome combination of rivers, mountains, desert, and ocean. We have the deepest lake in the country, the shortest river, and of course, we have Bigfoot. Quirky, yes. Unique, oh yeah. But there are also deep, penetrating questions to answer here. Like, why does Oregon have the most ghost towns in the nation? Why is it illegal to fish with canned corn? And what is the difference between maximum assessed value and real market value when calculating property taxes?
Wait, what?
If you're new to home ownership in Oregon, it can be confusing to keep up with how property values are calculated and taxed, and how they can change from year to year. In Oregon, property taxes are collected by the county and distributed to each taxing district. Property taxes are the largest local revenue source we have to fund our schools, fire districts, cities, public safety, and other vital services. The amount of property tax that you pay is based on the assessed value of your property and the tax rates of the districts that service your property. The current system was started in 1997. Oregon voters passed Measure 50, which was designed to limit property taxes. Measure 50 created what's called the maximum assessed value, which was the real market value of your property in 1995 less 10%. Real market value is what your house would be worth if you were to sell it to any random dude for the best price you could get. The county assessor's office calculates real market value of all property in the county on January 1st each year. So if this house's real market value in 1995 was $100,000, then the maximum assessed value of this house in 1997 was, wait for it, $90,000. Makes sense, right? By Oregon law, your property taxes are calculated each year based on which of these two is lower, your real market value or your maximum assessed value. The lower number is then called your assessed value, and that's what your taxes are calculated on. So what about the house that's built after the maximum assessed values were created? One that wasn't there in 1995? Well, here's the answer. Each year, the assessor calculates the average of maximum assessed value to real market value for every type of property, like residential, and applies that percentage to the market value of new property in that year. So they get to have a MAV too. Let's go back to our sample house. Let's say that last year, our sample home's real market value was $100K, and its maximum assessed value, or MAV, was $90K. If the market is favorable and the home's real market value increases to $120,000, the maximum assessed value can only increase 3% this year. So the MAV can only go to $92,700. That's below the real market value. So the assessed value becomes $92,700. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule. For example, if our sample house gets a major addition adding up to more than $18,200 in a year or $45,000 over 5 years, both the real market value and the maximum assessed value would go up. These amounts are adjusted each year according to the Consumer Price Index. On the other hand, if the roof had been replaced using similar materials to the original, that would simply be general ongoing maintenance and repair. GOMAR, as they say in the business. Adding a second story, building a detached garage, or a pole barn, those are exceptions that would change RMV and MAV. Replacing old kitchen appliances with new, well, that's GOMAR. And there you go, the basics on property values, which certainly have an effect on property taxes. Don't forget that property taxes also go up and down because of voter-approved ballot measures and other tax levy changes. Stay on top of your investment. Read your tax bill every year, as well as any additional information included with the statement. Pay attention to changes proposed by taxing districts. And get out and enjoy your really cool state and its unique features, like awesome lighthouses, or even the tallest barber pole in the world.
That's pretty good. Do you want to stop there, Claudia?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, thank you for that. What we're trying to round out some of those concepts is the real market value, the maximum assessed. We understand how that was originally set now in 1997. But again, as we're adding new construction, which now also by that video, hopefully you've grasped that it includes any major remodels or change in use. They're called exception events. And when some piece of property has an exception event, like coming out of an exemption or change in use or a large expansion, addition, tear down and rebuild, all those are going to be considered an exception event for the year. And the exception events get the new CPR to create new MAV for that year. So some of the things we're going to be talking about in the slideshow is, well, what about if it's redeveloped, if a property's redeveloped or change in use, change in zoning? Those things can trigger recalculating the maximum assessed value. And depending on the climate in the market, that could be a win or that could be a loss for the property owner, and inversely a win or a loss for the taxing district. As the real estate market grows and the gap between real market value and MAV on properties that were not affected, as that gap gets wider, then the CPR becomes lower, and the amount that's going to be added to the tax roll for construction on any given year is smaller. I guess that's just the easiest way to say it. In the last 3 years, we've had a change property ratio, as an example, on multifamily apartments, which are popping up all over the place. But the CPR, because the real market value of multifamily has gone really through the roof, it's gone up 20%, compounding over about 5 years consistently. It created a ginormous gap, if you will, between real market value and MAV on apartments that hadn't had any exception events. Well, so this change property ratio, like I said, over the last year or two, maybe is 0.4 or 0.45. Well, what that means is 40 or 45% of the real market value of a brand new apartment complex in its total is going to become taxable in the first year or two that it comes on. And then once that maximum assessed value is established based on that change property ratio, then that MAV will go up 3% as was illustrated in the video until some sort of exception event happens. So very favorable for property owners and builders when the market's really high or increasing, and it becomes more advantageous long-term, I think, for taxing districts and stability overall when the CPR is more in line with maybe a 0.8 or a 0.7 number. When we get into under 0.5, meaning half the real market value is going to go on as taxable, we get a lot of questions because people go to coffee on Friday morning and they sit next to their neighbor and they exchange tax bills and go, how could this happen? But that's the crux of it. So with that, are there any initial questions before I jump into the slide that had the questions that Heather presented?
Any counselors have any questions? Counselor Cunningham?
Yeah. So for this last year, what would be the CPR on a single family home?
The single family homes were running at 0.5, almost 0.6. That's down from, it's been as high as 0.85 and 0.9. But again, what we're seeing is the market is still, it hasn't decreased in real market values. Homes are still selling at a higher price. What we're seeing is that there's fewer transactions. So the affordability of homes is becoming questionable. But those that are selling are still selling at 3 to 5% higher than last year. For McMinnville, Newburgh is somewhere similar. But if you looked at a 10-year run rate, it's probably up closer to 40% over that period of time. So again, as that real market value continues to go up and that MAV stays capped at 3%, the larger that gap is, the less of a CPR we're going to apply to new construction. So the Baker Street build, that Second Street, they have very favorable change property ratios establishing their MAV over the last 3 years, compared to, say, anything from 2006 through 2014, when they were more in that 0.8, 0.6 range. Not 0.6, 0.8, 0.7.
Any other counselors? Questions? I think we're good.
Okay, and one other thing I'll say is that this calculation of the change property ratio, again, the real market value to the MAV, the gap I call it, we do the same calculation for all property types. So single family residence, commercial, industrial, multifamily, rural tract land, that's not in the city, but actually you do have a little bit, so on and so forth. So it's not all properties, it's very specific to property type. So we would look at residential together, commercial, industrial, et cetera. Okay? Okay, so I'm gonna give this another run here at sharing my screen to show the PowerPoint back. I believe it's this one. Share, F5. Okay, here, and then I say. All right, are we back onto the PowerPoint?
Yes.
And can you hear me? Okay. So one of the questions that came up here is, I gotta move this bar out of the way here. Assessment of large projects under construction. So, what can I use for an example? The creamery that got rebuilt, let's just use that. Let's pretend that creamery was a brand new build. It took, I think, 2 years, maybe two or 3 years to construct. We would, as of January 1st of any given year, we would figure out the percent complete of that project based on the plans and what we anticipate it to look like when it's done. And if it's substantial enough, and we use, depending on the cost of the first 15 or 20%, we'll use that as a benchmark to say, for the first year of construction, if it exceeds 20%, 25, we're gonna put that on as 25% of the overall project estimate. And then we'll go back the next January 1st and we'll add whatever the difference is. If we made it all the way to 100% complete, we'll add it all. If we haven't made it to there, we might do another incremental step. And then for year 3, not many builds go past that. So I would say within 3 years, you've got the full project completed. The example I'm giving here is a multifamily apartments with 2 years in construction. Let's say it's 15 million for the total build. You know, they're 60% complete on January 1st of 2024, and that doesn't mean that 6 out of 10 units are completed, because that's not how phase construction works. They're building them all in similar phases and trying to get to a rollout of the whole thing's open. So 60% reflects how much of the project is complete. So we would take that 15 million by 60%. For the first year, we'd put $9 million in real market value on it. Hypothetically, the balance of the project is completed in the following year, let's say January of this year. We put the other 6 million on, or 40%. That gets us to the total 15. In each of those years, the real market value that's added goes through the CPR MAV calculation process. So if in 2024, the CPR for multifamily was 0.5, and we put on 9 million, then 4.5 million would go on the MAV line. And for that tax year, the difference between 9 million and 4.5, the lower of the two, which is the MAV, becomes the taxable base. Then you move forward to the following year, and if we add 6 million, then we would take that 6 million times that year's CPR, add it to the 4.5, and then you've got a combined MAV over a 2-year period. That represents the total 15, but it got CPR'd twice because that number can be different each year. So once you have the 15 million, in this case, the example I gave of a 0.4 or 0.5, that is for math sakes, let's say 0.5 CPR. So the real market value would be 15 million. The maximum assessed value would be 7.5 million. And then your taxable value is the lesser of the two. So that apartment complex that we put on for 15 million has a taxable value of 7.5 million. Divide that by 1,000 or times it by your millage rate, whatever the city has as a rate. That's going to give you the taxable, that's going to give you the taxes levied. So I'll pause there for a second because that last bullet point about properties, there is a construction, there's an exemption for construction in progress. But before I go there, does that sort of tiered approach to construction that lasts over 1 year period or 2 year period, does that make sense that it gets valued January 1st, CPR
Yes.
added?
It
Any
does.
questions on that? Pretty straightforward. Okay.
Makes sense.
There are a couple of exemption programs while facilities are in construction. There are industrial ones that are really more like enterprise zone or SIP programs, which we're not talking about right at the moment. What I wanted to bring to the attention is there is a commercial construction in progress exemption, which allows for large commercial projects that hit a certain dollar threshold in terms of what the improvement is going to be, and we'll give them a 2-year property tax exemption during the construction phase. We saw quite a bit of this in Newburgh and Dundee. I can't think right off the bat if I saw one in McMinnville, City of. I think maybe when Kendall Jackson Properties redid the buildings downtown and had to do all the seismic upgrades, that took longer than expected. We may have applied one there. But anyway, just know that there is a way for developers to get 2 years of construction in a tax abatement. And that one does not need to be approved by the city. That one is that's an ORS. I don't have the exact number, but it's an exemption that's statewide. It doesn't require local approval. Whereas the industrial ones, either the enterprise zone or this strategic investment plan, both of those do. So a little bit different. Okay, we move off of that question. Do we have any follow-ups?
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. Now let me see if here and go here. Change property ratio. So we talked about, I mean, that's what those 2 videos were. They didn't come out and say it, but that's really what they're trying to get at. And the change property ratio, it looks at, like I said, the gap between real market value and maximum assessed value on properties that had no exception event, so that you can get a feeling of what was the I should say the benefit of Measure 50 for those properties that didn't have new construction. You take that concept, you apply it to new construction, and that's how you establish the new construction math. And This is pretty straightforward. We do it by averages, so it's the average RMD and the average MAV for property type. Right now, what I'll call the CPR gap for residential is in the 40s. So the inverse of that is 60. That's where you get the 0.6 CPR. Industrial is down towards 5. Multifamily is below 5. And really things have been trending down. So again, it's great for folks who are building and want, they're coming on the roll with in a market that's increasing, and they're getting a benefit of a lower change property ratio. But it does create a lot of questions for somebody who built 5 years ago, and their MAV can be as much as 20% higher than the new construction. And they're going, wait a minute. So I think I've talked quite a bit about that CPR gap. The question 2 was how's it calculated? We've walked through that a couple of different times, both in residential and in an apartment complex. So I will let that one sit for now. Question 3 was, when is the CPR applied? So what's in assessment and tax, it's called an exception event. And an exception event is a couple different things, some bullet points there. New construction's the easy one. You got a vacant land, we build a new house. The value of that improvement is going to be an exception event. It's going to be new construction. It's going to get valued by my team. My team's going to go out there, see if it's 100% complete on January 1st or whatever percent it is. And then we will apply the change property ratio, create a MAV, and levy a tax. If somebody, I'm going to skip past tax exemption because that one has a few more questions down below. If somebody's in a special assessment program, we've got, not as common, but there were, I don't know if, Heather, we finally got all that stuff up at the top of the city, finally annexed in and converted, but at the end of the day, there's a farm forest deferral. So if you're in a farm deferral program, forest deferral program, not common in cities, but there were some. But there's also historical. There is a low income, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Basically, if you're getting specially assessed for any reason, because of the use of the property, and you get disqualified for use of the property changing to something else, that is considered an exception event. And what we would do is we would take the real market value on the year that the exception event happened, and we would treat it like new construction or anything else. We would say, okay, here's the real market value, what's the CPR for the year, and we would reestablish the maximum assessed value for that year that the exception event happened. That has big winners and big losers. There's somebody who maybe, just hypothetically, when they built their house or whatever, let's say it was a church. Build a church, and at the time the construction went on, it was a 0.8 CPR. Well, their maximum assessed value under 0.8 is pretty high. Now they get an exemption, so they're not feeling that. But had that not been a church and got an exemption, that 0.8 would have been notable. Now you bring it forward and the church gets converted to mixed use and some sort of maybe residential and a commercial use for a financial office or something. Well, we take today's real market value, re-CPR it, and let's say the CPR now is 0.4. What would have been a MAV of 80% of the real market value just became 40% of the real market value. So, and the inverse of that could happen. So the idea of an exception event and having to apply a change property ratio in any given year can have winners and losers depending on where the real market value is at and the market in general is heading. Again, the higher market gap, the lower the CPR. So special use programs, that was those. Converted to a different use. So this really has to do with like a downtown district or something going through regentrification, and maybe the planning department allows for a different type of zoning allowance, and everyone starts taking advantage of that. So it was condos, and they changed that into maybe it's housing on the first 3 floors, and then there's some commercial space, and then there's retail on the ground level. A major change in use can also trigger an exception event, wherein we would go and look at the improvement value, do the same sort of thing. One that's a little more straightforward, sort of along the lines of construction, is property tax exemption. So if you're receiving an exemption under whichever program, and believe me, there are more programs for exemptions than there are statutes around taxation. So there's a whole slew of them. And if you lose your exemption for whatever reason, that property then goes through the same exception event process. So we've got new construction, loss of an exemption, disqualification on a use program, or conversion to a different use allowed through a zoning change. Those are the scenarios when we would look at the RMV for that given year that happened. We would re-CPR the real market value and create a new map. I'm going to pause there. That's a lot. So questions or discussion around that? This is more of a...
Counselors, any questions? We're good?
And just
Okay.
to provide some context, sorry, Derek. So in McMinnville, a lot of our housing projects in the last couple of years have been multifamily products. And I think the greatest dip that I can see in the CPR that's occurred is in the multifamily products. So it used to be 0.75. My numbers show from your tax page, Derek, that they were 0.35 in 2024, 2025. So almost half of what it was 6 years previously. And so those products all came online at that reduced level. And there was lots of discussion of, we've had all this new construction, how come that's not creating tax base, so to speak, for the city and the overlapping taxing districts?
Yeah, I think, yes, you're spot on. And the reality there is that the real market value for multifamily was increasing at a level that we couldn't really even keep up with, because we're looking at the value as of January 1st, almost 18 months in arrears by the time it becomes questionable after you get your tax statement, you pay your tax bill, then you're like, wait a minute. We were increasing real market values 15, 20, 1 year was 30%. But that asset type was just, it was going through the roof. And I think a lot of that has to do with people not being able to afford traditional stick-built and the pressure on finding housing that was affordable. You also had rent caps put in on the 10%, I think it is, or 9 or 10%, whatever it is, rent cap increase. And investors just started hitting that every year. And so rents were going up substantially. And these properties, multifamily is valued on the income approach. So as rents are going up 10% consistently year over year over year, and the investment community is drawing to that like flies to the flame, that real market value is just skyrocketing. And you're right, as those two new major developments were coming on, and another two in Newburgh, they were just coming on at, like you see, 40%, 37% of the real market value. So that's, maybe that's the unintended consequence of Measure 50's CPR concept, but you're right, that is what happened. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. So exempt to taxable transitions. When does a property become sold by a government to a private party? Well, let's just say, it doesn't necessarily have to be government. It can be, maybe public's a better way to say it, or let's just say exempt status. So when a property gets its exempt status as of July 1st of any given year, that status stays in effect until July 1st of the next year. So although we do assessment in terms of valuation of property on January 1st, the tax year starts July 1st, and it's on July 1st or 2nd, or whatever the first day is we go to work. If that property has an exemption, it will keep its exemption even if it transitions to another holding that's not an exempt holding for the tax year. So if the city had property and sold it on July 3rd, that property would still be exempt for that year. Or if a church sold, or if some low-income housing of Habitat, if Habitat sold one of their homes, they build a home, they sell it August 1st, that home's exempt until the following tax year. So the inverse of that works the same. If it's not taxable on July 1st, meaning you acquire the property, let's say the city buys a piece of land that was held privately, and it's after July 1st. The tax bill is fully levied, or will be fully levied and fully due. There's not a proration. There isn't a, it was only held in a non-exempt status or taxable status for 90 days. The rest of the year, it was in the city's hands. That doesn't come into play. So it's all about July 1st. If it has an exemption, it keeps it. If it doesn't have an exemption, it won't have an exemption for that year, for the first year, for the year that it's being acquired. So that, I think the example there points that out. Selling the property before July 1st, it's taxable for the year. If you sell it after, it won't be taxable until the following year. So the purchaser will get a tax relief, abatement, I guess. The one thing that I would say is really important when property transitioning to an exempt entity that is exempt by, or automatically exempt, city, county, ODOT, you have to get a certification from our office that all back taxes are paid in order to record the deed to transfer it to the exempt entity. We had a series back in, I don't know, how long have I been here? 14 years? We had a series 10 years, maybe or so ago, where cities were acquiring properties that had back tax liens, and then they would go on, the next year would go around, and we're like, oh, great, we have a tax bill to send the city of McMinnville, which we can't by statute do. We can't send a tax bill to somebody that's not taxable. Same thing in Newburgh. It was really kind of across the state, and Port of Portland had problems with it, other ports down along the coastline. So what they did is they came up with before anything transfers to let's call it public entity that's going to be automatically exempt, you have to get a certificate from our office to make sure that the back taxes are paid, or the clerk won't be able to record the deed. That was kind of a checks and balance that went into place. But that being said, do we get the sort of the pivot around July 1st? If it's in, it stays in. If it's out, it's taxable. Works both ways. Any questions on that?
No questions.
Excellent. How am I doing on time here? Let me check the time real quick. Ooh, I gotta pick up the pace. Here we go.
About 10 minutes.
Okay. Taxable to exempt. Well, I think we just talked about that. That same transactions apply, or the dates still apply. So
Yes.
now we're moving on to urban renewal. So how does public acquisition in an urban renewal area affect the frozen base? So urban renewal is an overlay from a parent district. So the city of McMinnville is a parent district, let's just call it that. The urban renewal lays over the top of that. And those are familiar with increment financing, urban renewal, however you want to call it. The growth above the frozen value for the base is then taxed and levied to provide funding to the urban renewal. So post-urban renewal, you've got two accounts. A portion of it's going to the city. The incremental increase above the frozen amount is going to the urban renewal district. If that property becomes exempt, both the incremental piece and the underlying frozen value will become exempt. So, to the extent that you're acquiring property in an urban renewal, it's really no different other than you've got a layered district. If you acquired property that wasn't in the urban renewal, whatever was going to the tax base as it was privately held would then be gone when it became publicly held. So that's pretty straightforward. There's some examples here on Northwest Rubber and the OMI properties. Yeah, so OMI was getting a tax bill. The county purchased that building in December of 24. So it will not be exempt, and there was a fully burdened tax bill up through that last tax year, starting July 1 of 2025. Now it's in the public ownership, and there will be no tax bill for 25. I don't know the acquisition date of Northwest Rubber for the city. I know there's a lot of talk about the development there, but the same date the same date components would apply. So if it was acquired after 7/1 of 2024, then there's a tax bill for this year. If it's now in the ownership of the city, it will be exempt for 25, 26, so this coming October.
So Derek, just to clarify, because this has come up quite a few times, the overall amount of taxes generated by the urban renewal area in terms of the frozen base can change based on the property ownership over time, if I understand that correctly. So if the public, if nonprofits pick up property over the time of the urban renewal area, that frozen base, and it stays in a non-profit status and tax exempt, that frozen base collection can actually go down.
Well, yeah, because the taxable value for both components is going away. It's not so much that the frozen base is going down, it's what's taxable is going down. So the frozen base is talking about the assessed value, I think it's 1 year prior to the year that it's adopted, but assessed values can go up and down, just like the increment value can go up for urban renewal. If it all plummeted, it can go below a frozen base. There's no guarantee on the frozen base for a levy in the parent district. It's sort of just everything. It's used to calculate anything above, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to calculate. It's not going to guarantee that base if for some reason so much of it, if the city bought everything that was in urban renewal, and that frozen base lost all of its underlying tax base plus the incremental tax base, they would both be lost. So it's about taxable value versus frozen base. That makes sense.
So what happens when an urban renewal sunsets and there's still money in the urban renewal fund?
I haven't experienced that in Yamhill County. I have heard of, I'll call them stories in other counties where either the urban renewal overspent and paid back, or they sunset it and there's dollars still remaining. My guess would be that once it's dissolved, then, sort of like annexations, when we add things back to the footprint of the city, whether it's those accounts by removing the urban renewal overlay, then the value that comes from urban renewal will go back to the city as the base. But I don't believe, I'm not 100% sure, I don't believe it's an exception event to remove an urban renewal. Like we wouldn't revalue and then remap everything in the urban renewal. Just talking out loud, I don't believe that's the case. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. That wouldn't make sense. So I would think that the value attributed to the increment value that was then being levied and assigned to urban renewal would just come back to the base. I do have Eileen on, I think, maybe Eileen's been with the county forever. I'm not sure that she's gone through an urban renewal being canceled either, or maybe she had to drop off. I can follow up too.
Okay, yeah, if you could let us know. Counselor Cunningham has a question.
Yeah, so specific to Northwest Rubber, because it has a frozen base today, it will continue to have a frozen base as we move forward. But that property being redeveloped, obviously there will be some that may be taxes exempt, but there will be other portions of it that are not, a hotel and some multifamily that won't be exempt if it goes through the way it's looking. So obviously, we'll see a significant increase in real market value for the hotel and that multifamily. But there is a frozen base existing right now. When the urban renewal district sunsets and the tax bases go to what level they will be, is it going to be based off of the frozen, or the old tax rate, or is this one of those situations where the change will come in and they will be immediately assessed at which will still be a maximum assessed value, but will still be assessed at above that frozen base? I think I said that correctly.
Yeah, I think I get the question. So if you think of the frozen value and the incremental increase in value as the parts that make the whole. So in the event that the incremental piece of value assigned to urban renewal goes away, that combined with the frozen base should be the real market value. I mean, what we do is we say, we think the hotel is worth it's $20 million complex, and the frozen value is $10 million. Well, that attributes the other 10 to urban renewal. In the event that urban renewal goes away, then the total value comes back to just the parent district. So, and then the same rules apply. Like you've got a maximum assessed and the MAVs for each get combined also. So you bring MAVs back together. I guess another way to say it is like if you had a parcel that was partitioned and you combined them, and the parcel for example, was half owned by the city and half owned in urban renewal, and you guys combine those into one ownership, meaning urban renewal goes away and the city's now in charge of this, then we would literally take the real market values and combine them, and the MAVs and combine them, and call that the real market value and MAV for the go forward. Then there's a question of whether it's taxable or not. So, every account is calculated. They have a real market value and a MAV, and then you apply an exemption to that, because you got to get the lower of the two has to become the taxable value, and then you have to exempt that. So it would go through a similar calculation to say, well, here's the combined real market values now that we had the urban renewal dissolved. Here's the combined MAVs. Which of those two is lower? And then does an exemption apply to that assessed value? And whatever the exemption, let's say it's a 50% exemption because half of it's owned and operated by the city and the other half is owned and operated by, you leased it out to somebody for whatever, then we would give a 50% exemption, if you will, to that, and the other 50 would be taxable once you've calculated the total assessed value. That's a pretty deep one, but does that make sense?
Yep, we have a question from Councilor Chenoweth.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I just actually want to follow up on what you just said. Wouldn't the development of the property result in a reset?
Yeah, so any new construction would definitely, and if it's new construction, let's say the city builds a city building, well, we would calculate the value of the real market value of the construction, we would CPR it, and then it'd be exempt. So once the use of that transferred from city property to maybe leased out to whoever, I think the airport's actually a pretty good idea or example of this, but you lease it out to somebody who's not exempt, then at that time, whenever that happens, the real market value would be CPR'd to create a MAV for the taxable portion. But as long as it's whatever's being built, as long as it's for and used by the city or a taxable entity, we'll go through the math to do the real market value, create the MAV, but then we just exempt it. So there'll be a point in time, and I don't know if it's right at development or if it's phased in, but if there's some sort of transition from city use to a private use, then we would do percentages of the total parcel over time. How much of it is exempt, how much of it is not. But the idea of creating a real market value and a MAV would happen independent of that secondary calculation for exemption, because you've got to get to the point of a taxable value before you can exempt something.
Yeah, I think we're more interested in not being exempt. RB Rubber, Northwest Rubber will develop and not going to be owned by the city. And so what that change will be there.
Yeah, any redeployment or redevelopment of that parcel will be what we called earlier an exception event. If it's not used, owned by the city, there could be a question where you're building something you're not going to use and occupy, and at what point is the use of that not being used by the city, which is a requirement. If you lease it out, or if you give up a bundle of rights, any portion of the bundle of rights for use other than the city, then there's a taxable event. So, if out of the gate you're saying, build to lease, or if I don't know honestly, I don't know what else happening up there, but the new construction event would go through the process, and then however much of that is still exempt because of either use or ownership would be a portion of it. But if it's not held by the city, or it's not used by the city and leased out, or something along those lines, then it's taxable right away.
Okay.
Mayor,
So it's
I know you're at 7. Can I ask one follow-up question that I think captured a lot of the remaining questions that we have, and it's about the Northwest Rubber site. So, Derek, to follow up on what you just described, the city's interested in selling the whole property and having it all redeveloped and not retaining any assets on it. But there is a question about affordable housing relative to a private for-profit developer providing affordable housing, and the decision-making for that becoming tax exempt, that component of the project. And the question that's come up is it automatically tax exempt, or do they have to apply for it? And if they apply for it, is that a discretionary decision that the city also participates in?
Yeah, so there is a couple of options, and we talked about this just briefly, but there are a couple of options for low-income housing. And there are programs that need to be adopted locally, either by city or by county. And then there are programs that are more overarching that are statewide, and there's even federal programs. So depending on how this would come together, it might vary. You have more control over the programs that are locally adopted. The others that have statewide application or federal application, we don't even really see those in our office. We get notice of those coming down to us. But if, for instance, you adopted a low-income housing program for the city of McMinnville, and I think I saw somewhere that you guys might have. I haven't seen the documents or any orders that may have put that in place, but we would develop an application around that, and the application would have requirements for obviously the AMI, the number of units and number of units for certain levels of income, et cetera, et cetera. But those, if qualified, are exempt. So going back to trying to get something taxable on the tax roll, there really isn't a taxable formula if you adopt a low-income housing project and it qualifies. Now, if there is a, let's call it like a Section 8 housing development, where that's a low-income housing special assessment. So we in the assessor's office calculate their taxable value differently than anything we talked about today. And there's a lot of discussion. We would have to talk about that pretty extensively if we were to get into that. But we basically have a different way of creating a taxable value for low-income housing that meets that requirement. But it is not completely exempt. It's like, let's just call it, for sake of this discussion, it's 60% exempt or 80. So there is that's a completely different program. And then you've got land held for development with the intent to be developed into low-income housing. That's like a Habitat for Humanity concept, where they'll buy land and then over time they start building houses. A lot of that's out there on out by the airport, et cetera, on the way out on the 18 bypass. But there's 3 or 4 different options there. I think the key there is, if there's an exemption program that they qualify for, then there isn't a taxable portion unless it's the state low-income housing, or there's a transfer of ownership through that housing project somehow. So they like Habitat will build 10 homes and sell them. But once they sell them to the low-income applicant or whoever they're working with to put in the home, it does become taxable at that point. Versus you put in a low-income apartment complex, and it's going to be low income for as long as it's held under that ownership, and it's a nonprofit organization, and it abides by the city's whatever ordinance they came up with to approve the program. Then that one won't be taxable until there's a change. So there's a lot of options in that space. It's kind of hard to pin down without maybe talking through more specifically some development options.
So it's 7 o'clock and we're out of time, unfortunately, but we appreciate, was there any last thing that you need to share with us, or can? No,
we can move on. We're just perfect timing. Our last slide was about affordable housing and benefits for private developers and whatnot. There's also Kevin Mannix introduced a bill, I don't know for sure if it got passed, but it was converting public lands into private development and some incentives around land exemptions for a holding period, and then improvement exemptions during construction. That's something that somebody might want to look into. It was a bill that I was tracking for a while, and then when the legislative session sort of took its left turn, I don't know if it made it or not.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. Thank you so much for your time, all of you, for being here.
Okay, thanks for having us, and take care.
Great.
Thank you.
And I'm going to close the work session at 7:05. Counselors, good if we just keep going? Okay. I will now call the City Council meeting to order at 7:06, and I ask for Claudia to do a roll call.
Counselor Chenoweth?
I'm first here.
Counselor Payne?
Here.
Counselor Geary?
Good evening.
Counselor Cunningham?
Here.
Counselor Tukolsky? is here, but not here. Council President Peralta
Here.
and Mayor Morris.
Here. Next, I'm going to call Meg Ordaz up to the public table, and she's going to lead us in the pledge. So if you're able to stand for the pledge, please stand. And Meg is the president of the MDA. Thank you, Meg. We're going to move on to public comments. Any interested audience members are invited to provide comments, and any comment provided that requires some type of follow-up will be assigned to a staff member. Anyone may speak on any topic other than a matter in litigation, a land use decision that is or will be in front of the City Council, or a matter scheduled for a public hearing at some future date. Comments will be limited to 4 minutes per person for a total of 32 minutes. If you are on Zoom and wish to speak, please use the raise your hand feature or chat feature and send a chat to the city recorder team. Once your turn is up, we will announce your name and unmute your mic. Please announce your name and the city you live in for the record. We will start with those who have pre-registered. And just make a note that after this, we have a public hearing on the building fees, so it is separate from this. This is just public comment. Do we have anybody signed up?
Yes, and before we start, I do want to state for the record that we received a written comment from Sandra Atwood that I have emailed to the full council and will be made part of the amended packet posted tomorrow. First, we'll start with Mark Davis.
Hi, Mark.
Mark Davis, McMinnville, Mayor Morris, and members of the council. At your last meeting during the discussion with representatives of Recology, it was disclosed that there was a consultant's report, apparently paid for by the city, that related to the monopoly operations of Recology. I made a public document request to see that report and was told it was not available per ORS 192355, subsection 4, and I quote, "Information submitted to a public body in confidence and not otherwise required by law to be submitted, where such information should reasonably be considered confidential, the public body has obliged itself in good faith not to disclose the information, and when the public interest would suffer by the disclosure. Even if the full report needs to be kept secret from the public, I fail to see how the public interest would suffer by disclosing the general conclusions of the consultant's report, which presumably have something to do with whether the citizens of McMinnville are being fairly charged for garbage and recycling services. Recology operates a city-guaranteed monopoly on solid waste collection services in McMinnville. It is illegal for another business to provide garbage service in the city. The franchise agreement between Recology and the city guarantees Recology a profit. In return, Recology is supposed to disclose its costs to prove that the public is not paying more for Recology's services than necessary to cover their costs and their guaranteed profit. Recology's financial statements show that they do millions of dollars of transaction with affiliated companies, essentially doing business with themselves, charges that ultimately are paid through the rates we all pay. Because such affiliated transactions could be used to manipulate charges for service, they must be disclosed, and per Article 6, Section 1F of the franchise agreement, quote, "Charges for these services shall be equal to or less than 80% of the cost of procuring such services from third-party service providers," end quote. Recology is the one that chose to set up this web of affiliated companies to provide the services listed in the franchise agreement, and I believe they have an obligation under that agreement to show that the public is in fact not being overcharged for costs that are not market determined. I think Recology generally provides good service at what appears to be a reasonable price. That doesn't mean, however, that the service couldn't improve and that the price could not be lower. The obsession with secrecy surrounding Recology's rates seems absurd to me, given that virtually everything they do is in public view and their disposal costs are set by the market. If they want the public to guarantee them a profit, they need to publicly justify their rates. I ask the council to release the consultant's report and require Recology to justify their costs publicly as called for in the franchise agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So Geoff Hunsaker is our representative for Recology. He is on vacation, but when he returns, I will ask him to reach out to you. Okay?
Next, we have Kevin Chambers.
Hi, Kevin.
Hello. Kevin Chambers, and I'm from McMinnville. As a representative of the CPR PAC, I want to issue our strong support for the proposed bond measure for the new Recreation and Aquatic Center, upgrades to the Senior Center and the library, and much-needed repairs to our city park infrastructure. As you prepare to vote tonight, I want to thank you for your time and energy and thoughtful consideration that you've devoted to this project. It's been encouraging to see the council work together to find common ground, navigate tough decisions, and make thoughtful compromises that reflect the values and priorities of our community. And your collaboration has helped shape a project that's both physically responsible and responsive to the long-standing needs of McMinnville residents. The bond is more than an investment in buildings. It's an investment in public health, community connection, and a quality of life for people of all ages. The new facilities and upgrades to existing buildings will provide much-needed space for swimming lessons, youth programs, senior activities, and accessible recreation for all. When you vote to move this measure forward, our PAC is ready to take the reins. We've already built a strong foundation of community support and are fully prepared to lead a thoughtful grassroots campaign to help voters understand the value of this project and what it means for the future of McMinnville. Thank you again for your leadership and hard work and your willingness to put this important decision in the hands of our voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that.
Next, we have Jackson Darling.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jackson Darling. I'm a McMinnville resident. And again, I'm representing the MAC Pickleball Club. I'm the president, and we have about 350 members. And like you've heard many times before, pickleball is a sport that brings many multi-generations together. I'm a teacher, and I have the luxury of spending time playing in the summer, and I played twice a day with the people that played in the morning and just came from our advanced night. And we have many different people that come and play, and it's opportunity. Unlike other sports, I've played many sports in high school and 2 sports in college, and coached youth and high school sports. And pickleball just kind of brings that opportunity for people to connect and community that unlike many other opportunities in the area, where I know many people through pickleball, and my nephew has come down and met people in their 70s and 80s and get to know them that has no connection with other sports or coaches, where typically a teenager doesn't interact with people that are not family members of different generations. And just the community and the involvement that it brings together. And like Chambers was just saying about, we are the pickleball club would urge you guys to move towards the bond. And like he was just saying that it's not just in buildings, we need more pickleball courts, and also to bring that community invest in McMinnville, which I think is a great investment to have new facilities. We play in the community center, and have you heard many times, community center doesn't fit the needs of the community, in particular pickleball as well, with the 3 courts and just the facilities. And I'd like to see our community invest in things that really bring people from all in McMinnville. And outside the area, we have many people that come to McMinnville outside the area and stay and go to restaurants and things like that, spend time and their money in the community because of the courts and that we are much needed of more. And I just wanted to thank you guys' time. The Pickleball Club would love to work on moving forward with the bond and that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Cheryl Shockey.
Of course we do. Hey, Cheryl.
Good evening, I'm Cheryl Shockey, and I live here in McMinnville. I was just going to let Jackson talk for the club because I've talked to you multiple times. But this evening, I was outside, my neighbor was watering his lawn. I went over to check out our neighborhood corn patch right in the neighbor's front yard. He's like, it's dead, do whatever you want with it. So we decided to put in 6-7 rows of corn. It's been fun to watch. Anyway, I'm over there chatting with him, and he said, well, what are you doing tonight, Cheryl? I said, well, I'm going to go to the city council meeting, and they're going to, do their thing. And I said, you got anything you want me to, maybe share? But then I thought, no, Jackson's going to talk. And he said, yeah, tell him to lower taxes. And I said, yeah, but you know what? I'm really going to support this bond that I want them to put to the voters that's actually going to raise your taxes. He goes, well, what's on that bond? And I said, well, it's going to get us a new rec center with a swimming pool. And his eyes got ginormous. He said, you know what, Cheryl? I am retiring in June of 2027, and my goal is to exercise twice a day, and I want a really nice community pool to be able to go to be able to work out in. And I said, you know what, I got to also teach you how to play pickleball because you're going to be hooked. So he said, I would gladly pay more taxes if we had something really nice like that come into play. I said, all right, I'm gonna go talk, and I'm gonna share that little story with the council members. Talking about pickleball, really quick story, I promise, got 2 minutes. Last night was ladies' night down at the city courts. It's unofficial ladies' night because we really don't have control of those courts, much to, what we think we do. And these 2 young girls, they were middle school age girls. They were playing on a court by themselves, and here are all of us, my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, and we went over to them and said, hey, you girls want to play with us? And you know what? They jumped right in. We were playing with, these girls were playing with 60, 70, I don't think we had an 80-year-old there last night, but they had the time of their lives. And they said, we're going to be back. We're going to be back. And we said, bring your friends. Because that's what pickleball can do. It can get very young people and those of us a little bit older together, just hanging out, having fun, doing a lot of laughing. I want to thank all of you for listening to us for the last many, many months, talk to you about not only pickleball, but about swimming and about soccer and about the senior center, which has a little special place in my heart, and also the library, because all of those things are going to make this hometown I love so much all the better. And it's going to bring other people in if we have really nice facilities. It's going to be a very big selling point. And I appreciate all your time, your openness to listen to us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cheryl.
That's everyone that signed up.
And nobody on Zoom?
Not yet that has raised their hand.
Is there anybody else in the room that wanted to speak? Okay. Thank you. Now we're going to move on. We have a public hearing tonight. We will now begin the public hearing process of the agenda for all public hearings being heard this evening. Please state your first and last name and the city you reside in for the record. Each person testifying will be allotted 3 minutes for their testimony. Public hearing to consider resolution number 2025-20, a resolution adopting a building fee schedule and repealing all previous resolutions adopting building fee schedules on the effective date of this schedule. Does any counselor need to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or recuse themselves regarding this topic? Okay. I'd like to call on Heather Richards, Community Development Director, to give a presentation on the topic.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Stuart Ramsey, our building official, would be here with you tonight, but his son flew in from out of town for his son's birthday, and he asked me if I could pinch hit for him. If you ask me any difficult questions, he is on his phone, so I can text him for that. But this is our annual fee update. It's a standard fee update. We do it based on CPI index. We use the same CPI index that we use for both engineering and planning fees. So it was 2.9%. The reason this isn't coming to you at the same time as the planning and engineering fees is that for building fee updates, they actually need to go to the Oregon Building Codes Division first. They post it for 45 days, notice the development community, they collect comments, and then we do it at the local level. So that 45-day notice has already happened with the state. We're now in a process of conducting the hearing at the local level. This is scheduled for an August 1 implementation at the same date as the planning and engineering fee updates. Let's see, the other thing you should know is the building fund is a full cost recovery fund. So the building fees pay for the delivery of the program. The general fund does not participate in the support of that. That is 100% development supported, and the services provided are 100% to the development community as well. We do have a goal of achieving a 12-month reserve for that program. Best practices is actually 12 to 24-month reserve based on downturns, but we have a goal of 12-month reserve, and that's calculated into the fee update that you see.
So now it's counselors. Do we have any questions? Counselor Payne?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me, Director Richards, what's the reserve right now?
Oh, we are
Like
at
what amount is in the reserve?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Excuse me. So I know it based on the amount that we have, that we're trying to achieve in terms of months. So we are in that 11 to 12-month window, so that's why we're only in the CPI index at this point in time.
Have we increased these every year?
If the CPI increases, we do increase them every year, yes. I think in 2020, when the pandemic happened, we didn't increase any of the development fees, planning or building at that time.
And our true costs have gone up as well, not just choosing to go by a CPI because it's annually?
Yeah, I would say our true cost has actually gone up more than the CPI index, but we adjust into that every year. So just like many other city programs, the cost of the building program is really mostly labor costs. It is our building official, building inspectors, and building permit coordinator. And so those labor costs are going up higher than the CPI index.
And now have your hours changed yet, that the developers and people getting permits can come in?
No, but thank you for asking that question. So we met today, actually. We want to, just like we said at the budget process meeting, we want to schedule a meeting with the development community and find out what hours would work best for them. And so we have penciled in August 12th in the morning for that, and we'll be sending out an email inviting folks, but I do see one here in the audience, so August 12th at 7:30. We want to invite them in and have a discussion as to what's working, what's not working, what hours would you like to see in terms of your product and how you use our services.
Would it not just be normal work hours? I mean, like an 8 to 5?
We've looked at what other communities are doing, and some are opening earlier and closing earlier. So I'm assuming from their development community, they heard if we can get in at 7 and get some things done before we get on site, that's important to us. Other communities are open early, close in the mid-afternoon, and open later again. So I think it's really the rhythm of the development community, and we want to find that out.
One more question about that, but you are looking at hopefully 5 days a week for this?
Yes, we're 5 days a week right now, so yes.
Any other questions? Counselor Payne.
Are you going to go through the spreadsheet, or you just want me to ask questions based on what's in the spreadsheet?
I was not going to go through the spreadsheet because none of the actual items in the spreadsheet have changed. It's the same fee schedule that we've had, just the numeration for the fee itself has changed.
I appreciate and value the time investment. I just had one question related to the excavation fee. It's on page 15 of the packet. I know there's been back and forth with the TMDL and the required compliance with that from the state. My question with the excavation fees is, does that fee also reconcile with the need for any TMDL monitoring, making sure that anything that's excavated is covered, et cetera, whatever the requirements of the TMDL are, because we do have a plan now?
Yeah, so I do know that our engineering department, our building department work very closely on the excavation permits and fees. The building official is the one that has the authority for the property that's in the private side of the property, and the engineering team has the authority for the public side. And so typically what will happen is, for instance, the West Hills subdivision right now, they're in a large grading permit, and both the building team and the engineering team worked with them based on what was anticipated right-of-way land and what was anticipated private land, and went through the process of reviewing the excavation permit together. So the two teams are working together on that. In terms of how it specifically impacts the TMDL, I wouldn't be able to answer that for you. I'm not sure the building official would either, because that is something that's in our public works venue.
I'm just looking for that full cost recovery element, but I know that we did engineering fees last year, so.
Yes, and they're in full cost recovery as well.
So it's probably budgeted for somewhere. Okay, thank you.
I have a hard time, our fees, they just seem super high to me. And then we always talk about affordable housing, but we pass these along, and yes, the developer passes them along to the homeowner. And so our housing prices don't really go any lower. We're just adding to the bottom line. It's really hard for me to keep increasing these, even though they're 100% cost recovery. I still not sure that I agree with all that process. It's really hard to do something in this town for as much as it costs you to get a permit to do something.
I'd be happy to send out to the city council whenever we do a fee update, we do hire a third-party vendor to do that, so it's in a neutral position. They do a survey of what other communities are doing in terms of their fees and where the city sits in that sort of analysis. We look at the 6 communities that are closest to us, the 3 above us in terms of population, the 3 below us in population, and then we always look at Newburgh as well. I'd be happy to send that out to you. Our fee schedule actually sort of sits in the middle there. And I will say our SDC fees are substantially lower than other communities.
Mayor.
Councilor Chenoweth.
Thank you for saying that, Mayor. Thank you for the time. I second your sentiments. Just because all the other cities are going up doesn't mean we need to too. That logic doesn't really carry a lot of weight with me. And one of the other concerns I have, and I've raised it already to you, Heather, is some of the recent code changes that have occurred and the costs associated to building of some of those code changes. So when we talk about the increased costs that are being passed on to what we're wanting to be affordable housing, it's not just in the fees, but it's also in the code. And so the combination, I think right now, we're kind of heading in opposite directions of what we want to be accomplishing. So I also have grave concerns about these increases.
We'd be happy to look at the fees. We're charged to deliver a program. We're delivering a program at a very reduced staffing level with zero redundancy amongst our FTEs, which is an unusual situation. So if we have someone that's out, we don't have someone to replace that certification. We could, if directed by City Council, we could look at further reductions. It does impact customer service delivery. That's the reality.
Quick question. Oh, sorry.
Councilor Peralta.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to comment that I definitely appreciate the comments from the dais raising concerns about these costs, but the alternative to seeking full cost recovery would be to pull the money out of the general fund. So we'd be looking to make cuts in other programs in order to subsidize this development, which I don't think is a great public policy. The second point I'd make is that for true low-income housing, we have provisions in our code and policies to allow for reduced rates for the SDCs and other application fees, and charging the full freight for normal development projects enables us to subsidize those reduced costs for true low-income housing. So I think it's important for us to maintain the position that we will continue to charge the true cost of service for delivering these services. And I just want to say I appreciate Heather and her planning department, given the staffing challenges that they have, given the cuts that they faced in the current budget, and trying to come up with full-time staffing in the department. That, I mean, these are really difficult requests that we're putting on this department, and I think we need to make sure that they have adequate funding to meet those demands.
Sal, I appreciate your comments. I just want to note that I'm not always talking about low income. We also have people that are in the middle that are trying to do remodels and other things to increase the value of their homes, and these do affect them. So I appreciate your comments, but I want to add that too.
May I respond?
Councilor Peralta.
Thank you. I just want to say I definitely appreciate that in the middle-income housing, and I understand that the cost of land is probably the biggest driver of increased costs for middle housing in the community, and that's part of the reason I think why our planning department has been pushing so quickly to build out these area plans so that we can get past that dearth of available property. So I definitely appreciate the mayor's comments on that, but our subsidizing those costs would have to come out from somewhere else in the budget. And it's not like Heather is proposing these increases to do anything other than to just meet the basic service demand that is being placed on her department. And I think that they're at less than what they need for their current staffing, so.
Councilor Chenoweth.
You have a question and then a comment. Heather, when we did the budget, did the budget include the funds that were being gained as a result of this increase?
We do calculate, I'd have to look at that again. We do calculate, we forecast what we expect to get in terms of revenue fees, and we do it based on both the CPI index, but also what we're forecasting in terms of permitting levels. And actually, the forecast in terms of permitting levels is a larger driver than the CPI index for that. So we look at what
definite maybe?
What's that?
Definite maybe?
Well, we calculate the 2.9% in, but what I'm saying is we're looking at what's in the pipeline on the land use side, subdivisions that have been approved and platted. So we know that what's going to come in on the building permit side over the next year, the number of units of housing products and things of that nature. And that's a much larger driver for that forecast than the CPI index in terms of the revenue fees.
Okay. And then my comment would be, I appreciate the comments from the dais, but I would say there is definitely a room for philosophical disagreement as to whether or not we need to be doing 100% cost recovery. I've made the case multiple times that I think our city benefits from development occurring here, and so there is a reasonable argument that can be made that a percentage of these fees should be subsidized by the rest of the residents who do benefit from the development that's occurring within our community. So again, appreciate the comments, just want to raise that. Thank you.
Councilor Tukalski.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I had a completely different question. Heather, last time I purchased a building permit, it was cash or check only. Are we still doing that?
No, so that must have been a while ago.
Long time ago, yeah.
No, we're primarily, so we have got, in efforts to create efficiencies, we have actually, for our building permit side, only operate on an online e-permitting program, so everything comes in electronically and are paid for mostly by credit cards. We do offer the service of taking checks and cash if people still want to do that, but the majority of our business is credit card at this point in time.
Okay. I just would like to be easy to do business with, and it sounds like we're much easier now.
Yeah, most developers who develop in many other communities are always complimentary of our program and the ease in which to get through it and the fees associated with it. We do understand that there's a lot of local developers, there's a lot of homeowners doing improvement projects who are probably only interfacing with the system once every 10, 15, 20 years, and it's not an easy system to navigate. And so we are trying to ensure that our process still accommodates that type of user as well, so that they can come into the permit counter, work with permit counter staff on how to get online, submit their items, and pay for the permit fees. I was remiss in saying the resolution in front of you also has a policy in it, which is a policy that we've carried forward for several years now based on the direction from City Council in 2018, that does provide a 50% discount for affordable housing projects. They have to be qualifying affordable housing projects, and so qualifying is serving 80% area median income or less. That same policy has been adopted and applied to both planning and engineering fees as well.
Counselor Gary?
The analysis you referenced that we'd have a third-party provider provide to set those, that does a comparative analysis of our fees in those communities, do they also analyze the housing costs in those markets, in those cities as well?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but I'm happy to send out the report to City Council so they can see that in there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other counselors have any questions at this time? Comments? Okay, we'll now start to hear public testimony. Each person testifying will be allotted 3 minutes for their testimony. We will start with the people who signed up in advance to testify. Please remember to include your name, address for the record. Claudia, do we have anyone signed up to testify?
No one has pre-registered.
Okay. Does any counselor need anything clarified regarding the testimony of the speaker? We don't have. Is there anybody in the Civic Hall who wishes to testify on the topic? Now's your chance. Nope. Okay. Sorry, there's a long list here. And we have no one on Zoom as well? Okay. And phone. Any last questions from the council? Okay, then this concludes our public testimony for this evening. Does the staff have anything else that they would like to add to the record at this time?
No, thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, I will close the public hearing at 7:38. All right. So now we have an overview of our city's legislative program presentation. Heather Richards, Community Development Director, and Jody Christensen, our Special Projects Manager, to present.
So thank you, Mayor and Councilors. We have been wanting to bring this program to you for a couple of months now. We've had lots of requests for it. We wanted to present to you sort of our legislative program that we've been working on for the last couple of years, the process that we follow when we identify legislative priorities, the process we follow when we're working with our state representatives and federal representatives as we sort of promote McMinnville's needs and projects through those pathways to get to access resources. Jody Christensen, our Special Projects Manager, has been managing this program for us for the last couple of years. This is a new program for the city, and it has yielded success. We provided that to you in your staff report. She's going to go through that a little bit as well, but she will go through sort of our vetting process of putting these projects together, and then the list that we're always working with that is consistently evolving in terms of what our needs are now and what our needs will be in the future for these discussions.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to bring this.
Is your mic on?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Why did we start this program? The fact is that McMinnville has big city challenges and opportunities, but we don't often have access to the types of resources to be able to deliver those programs and those projects in our community. We're too small for federal programs, so we miss out on matching fund opportunities. We're too big to be considered rural, so we end up competing with urban centers, large urban centers. So McMinnville continued to fall through the cracks. We weren't receiving funds, programmatic funds. So we decided to shift the way that we thought about bringing money home. So not applying for grants and programs, but we wanted to move to a shovel-ready MAC approach. So this is an opportunity for the city to present projects during the legislative session for direct allocation.
Jody, can you pull that mic just a little bit closer, please?
Sure. filter, yes. It's an opportunity to bring money home through direct allocation as opposed to applying for funds. So we kicked it off in 22, heading into the long session of 23. In the staff report, I gave a detailed description of each of the sessions we've had, long and short. We also build in some federal opportunities as well. So I hope you've had an opportunity to check that out. So I think today what we wanted to do was talk about how did we land on the projects that were working. So we took considerable time in developing a proposed list of projects. Now remember, the projects have to fit into several filters. It has to be shovel-ready, which means the project has to be able to start delivery in 1 to 2 years. So you have to spend the money in a biennium. So it couldn't be a project that was going to be ready to go in 5 years. It had to be a project ready to go in a year or 2 years from the receipt of the funding. So that helps whittle down the list. We also had to make sure that the projects that we were putting forward were aligned with some of our bigger initiatives in the city. So your goals, the city council goals, were a filter in which we looked at the projects. We also used MacTown 2032 as a filter, saying, do these projects deliver what that plan has in store for this community? We also used the strategies from Water and Light as another filter. So we developed the list, and I would say it was a working list. So the idea was that we were always looking for an opportunity. We weren't saying this is the single project, this is the horse we're riding in the race. We had several horses lined up, and it depended on what the opportunity presented itself. So we were always navigating what are the priorities at the state, what are the federal priorities, what are the priorities in the community, how have things shifted. So I will tell you that this program that we had was year-round. One session would end, our next meeting we were planning for the next session. So we never took a break because we knew it would take a long time to get our projects ready. And we worked with our elected officials like Representative Elmer. We had a great opportunity to work with her on a signature bill. It was an extraordinary experience for us to participate in that. But that work doesn't happen in a couple-hour meetings. That happens with consistent nurturing of that work and support of our elected officials and making sure that the executive team here is feeling comfortable with the projects that we're putting forward. So some of the projects that we identified are here on this list, and I can tell you they were moving up and down the list depending on what was happening around us and in the environment and where the opportunities were presenting themselves. So the list, while it was a confirmed list, it could also be massaged. There could also be other things that were added to it because we were always keeping our eyes open for opportunity. And so this is an example. We were using this list to continually navigate what was happening with the project, where we were, the comfort level, particularly of the teams at the city that would have to deliver the project. So Public Works, engineering, planning, where were we with that team as well? So that is part of what we were doing. So another aspect of really good legislative work is you have to sell your story. You've got to tell the elected officials and the people who have the opportunity to put our project in a bill. They know our story. They know who we are and what's important to us. And so we spent a considerable amount of time thinking about that and making sure that we were telling the story. And I can tell you, Mayor, some of the things that we were learning are your conversations that we were having with Congressman Salinas when she came, or the staff, field staff for Senator Merkley's office. In the dialogue we were having, there were kernels of things that were starting to pop up. They were intrigued. They were asking questions. So we started to embed that into our storytelling, and we wanted to make sure that we were hitting on all cylinders. And most importantly, it's relational. A lot of times business in government is transactional, but it's also making sure that you're making friends and that you're being your authentic self with people who can make big things happen. So we spent a lot of time inviting elected officials, agency directors. We even hosted the newly elected Governor Kotek. We invite them into our community. We make them walk 3rd Street. We show them what the opportunities are for investing in that project. And then we also drive to Salem. So Mayor, Councilor Cunningham, Councilor Chenoweth, they had opportunities to meet with elected officials and talk about our stories. Those relationships that you're building are lasting relationships. So we hope that they'll continue to think about McMinnville and continue to think about the types of projects that we want to deliver here. The hard work paid off. So you could see the results here. I think it's a good track record. We started at 0, and within 2 years, we were bringing money home. And that's a testament to the way that this community presented itself, and there's confidence that we can deliver on the projects. With the budget, the decisions that were made with the budget, we have paused our legislative work, but I just wanted to share that the work that we did up until the pause, I believe, has been very fruitful. So we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Tell me again, why did we pause?
A budgetary decision by the council.
So just to clarify, so we paused the federal side of
Okay,
our efforts.
not the
We're
state
still
side.
You made decisions towards the end of the budget process to reaffirm the contract with the lobbyists at the state level, and then the repositioning of Jody's position into the general fund. We have been told that she will not be supporting the legislative program unless called for to do so in this short legislative process.
Okay, so okay, these might not be the place to ask these questions. I'll ask them later. Councilor Gary, did you have some questions?
So I see in the list of sort of the fiscal impact, $2 million for the Zone 2 water pump station as a McMinnville Water and Light victory. I mean, it's housing for McMinnville, but does McMinnville Water and Light contribute financially to our lobbyist efforts?
No, they do not. They have a lobbyist effort directly related to their organization and their mission.
Oh. Okay. Can you help me understand some of the requirements in the list you have, specifically things like maybe I'm interpreting it a little literal, but shovel ready means 12 to 18 months start and complete in 2 to 3 years. I read that as like a building or a road or a bridge. But I see we got the $850,000 for a 3rd Street improvement project to plans, continuing on with those plans. Yes. Does that still get interpreted by that shovel-ready element, as in we need to finish drawing those drawings by that 18 to 24 months timeline and build it? How do I apply that shovel-ready requirements to something like that, drawings?
So those are federal dollars. Shovel ready, when I was talking about the biennium, is the state legislation and the state money. The 850, it has different criteria around it. It's a much lengthier runway. We received the notification of the funding in early 24, and we are still negotiating the contract with ODOT to start that project, and we're within compliance of that money.
Just for a little bit more detail on that. When working with the federal delegation in terms of trying to get that federal appropriation, we needed to show that we were at 30% or funding and working towards 30% design documents to to be able to actually request more money for design to get us to 100% construction documents. We were also encouraged by the federal delegation staff to look at the project in a phase process. So we originally, when we started the 3rd Street discussion 3 or 4 years ago, when we started the legislative program, that's when it was a lot less scope in terms of a project. So we actually, our first time we went into the legislature at the state, we went in with a full request for 3rd Street based on the original scope, which was the sidewalks and the above-ground furnishings. And we learned very quickly that we were asking, 1, too much. That was a learning lesson for us. And 2, that we needed to either phase the project out or ask for last dollars in so that it was a successful construction project at the end of their biennium. And so that's what we've been doing since then. For the federal funds, we were able to show, if we were able to show 30% construction documents had been achieved by the time we got the funds, they saw that as sort of moving towards shovel-ready.
So, and maybe I need to back up to in the staff report, you have the approach. For the legislative approach, a strategic set of guidelines were created as follows. So that list is your list that you created for these projects, based on other requirements. But this is our list of how. Or this is your list of how you guys created these projects. Is that correct?
So if you're referring to the list of the approach,
Yeah.
those are best practices when you're doing legislative work.
Okay.
So those are something that we understand to be the best practices when you're developing projects for direct allocation. And working with a biennium so that if the funding is delivered in a session, we know we have a certain time frame, a shorter time frame to work with to deliver that project. So it has to be ready to start and be completed within that short time frame.
So based on best practices, this is the criteria you adopted.
So when you're saying you, I'm assuming you mean the city of McMinnville. So it has never gone. It's never gone through a city council adoption process. When it was put together, we were working with a team that was comprised of city leadership, so the city manager, the mayor, the special projects manager, who was the staffing for it, myself, and then we were working with a lobbyist that we had on contract, and then as well as staff from the different representative partners and stuff like that, to talk through how do we approach this? How do we move these types of projects forwards? What's the best practice that you see? So the first meeting we had was with Representative Noble when he was transitioning out, and we were asking questions, what do you see as successful at the state, and why do you see it as successful, and what would you recommend in terms of us putting a program together? And then we continued to vet that. So we vetted it with that internal team that was meeting. It meets every 2 weeks or so, year-round. And then we would bring things into the executive team and say, this is what we're working on from a legislative program. What do you think? We would start brainstorming projects. We would then vet those projects individually with those project leads and figure out if they met those sort of pulse points that we were hearing from the people we were working with, so our lobbyists and the representative staff, as to the best way to bring these things into the state and the federal level. And then we just continue to vet it that way. So the team is collectively a larger team internally as well as with some external partners. But it's never come to city council as a formal adoption these are the sort of vetting criteria.
Yeah. That jumps to my next question, is that final list, and I know those things evolve as you move and get new information, but never came to the council for review or approval, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
That was direction provided to us.
Which we can certainly discuss at our next session together, if we want to do that.
Yeah, I guess the main things I have with the list are residing in the jurisdiction of one sole department. I think it should be a broader effort, and then I think it should be this is a serious impact to the city of how much money and where our priorities are. I think it should be something that gets reviewed and approved by this body. So.
I just want to clarify, the Public Works Director is involved in our meetings with us. It's not, the The staffing of the logistics is just within the Community Development Department. The internal team that's working on the projects and programs and processes and meeting with our external partners is larger than just Jody and I.
Counselor Chenoweth?
I just want to back up Zach. I 100% agree with you. I think this needs to be coming before us. It's been kind of, I don't want to use the wrong word and make it seem shady because that's not been the intent, obviously, but it's been an opaque process. I think it would be really good to just talk about this now because I think we should be having this come before us in like an August timeframe so that we can be planning for the next session. Obviously, we're not going to make it in time for this short session that's almost upon us. But in terms of, I think we should have this as a regularly scheduled item that we are discussing what the priorities for the next legislative session are early enough that all appropriate steps can be taken for creating the artwork and the packaging and the sales pitch that we need to create. So I really would like to push for that.
One thing to note, and I just want to clarify this, is if the short session, they do have funds. There's been talk that there's going to be money possibly set aside to look at projects. We do have a project still there to put in front of them. Okay. Any other counselors? All right. Anything else you want to share, Jody?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, so now we're going to go to reports from our counselors and committees and board assignments on heads of our departments. So I am going to start to my left with Counselor Tukalski.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. My boards and my commissions have not met, so I have nothing new to report.
Jody, can you unshare your screen? Thank you.
I'll go ahead. DEIC, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Committee, heard a presentation from Jody Christensen regarding the upcoming ADA transition plan, and there was a lot of great dialogue with that. Landscape Review met last week and denied an applicant's request for reduction in tree planting size requirement in phases 7 and 8 of the Hillcrest subdivision, and I just want to share my gratitude to that committee for doing hard work and asking a lot of hard questions about trees. And then Local Public Safety Coordinating Council meets tomorrow.
Councilor Geary.
I was unable to attend the Visit McMinnville meeting. I'll give a super duper double update next time, and then otherwise my committees haven't met. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I've done in the go ahead. Councilor Geary has something.
I would be remiss if I did not say we are rounding out the season as Parks and Rec coach. The Black Dragons in the minor league are going for a winning record this year. We've got one more makeup game on Thursday night. If anybody wants to come out, 6 p.m. first pitch, field 4.
All right, perfect. So what I've done since the last meeting, I toured the Aquatic Center. We looked at visible concerns and thoughts for the new visibility concerns. So right now there's some visibility spots, hard to see people in the current Aquatic Center. So if we get to having a new one, looking at that as something that we need to take a good look at. So there's safety there, pool size and seating, and those are 2 priorities for the new rec center. And then I got to see the inner workings of the pool, which was pretty cool, and they are very old. Met with the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, John Olson, and we talked about ways that the city can improve our communication with the Chamber. And we also talked about how the city and the Chamber and other organizations can work together to do a better job to help our small businesses. MEDP, McMinnville Economic Development, has scheduled some MADE tours, which have been great. They're for the mayor and other elected officials and leaders to go look at things that are made in McMinnville. Last Thursday, we went to OC World Class Technologies on Riverside Drive. They are a company that started in McMinnville and they have grown in McMinnville. They do metal injection and most commonly known for their orthodontics. They do braces, brackets, and a system that they have put together reduces the time needed to get your beautiful smile. Also doesn't require you pulling the 4 teeth, which is pretty common when you get braces. So that was very interesting tour. And I thank MEDP for putting those on, and we'll be going to Skyline this week. I attended I would call an exploratory meeting regarding the Yamhill County Economic Alliance. Again, leaders throughout the county getting together to see what we can all do to improve our economic development. And as mayor, I am also a Water and Light Commissioner. Yes, I get to have another Tuesday meeting during the month. And yesterday it was an absolute honor for me, along with my fellow commissioners, to recognize and thank former mayor and Water and Light Commissioner Ed Gormley for his commitment to the city of McMinnville and Water and Light. He has put in over 39 years for this city, all unpaid, and he deserves a lot of our thanks. Yesterday, I joined Councilor Chenoweth as an elected official to be able to attend the active shooter training that the police department put on. It was a very interesting event. The officers went through different scenarios that they didn't know. They were just given a scenario, had to go in and look for the shooter and make, and anybody that's injured, find different zones to put people in. I found it very interesting. And I love how they worked together. They knew exactly what to do, the little things that you would just see that they did to help protect each other and obviously who they're going in to protect, whether it be students or in a commercial building or in a home. I appreciate their training, and I was very impressed. Councilor Peralta.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one brief note. Council of Governments Executive Director Scott Dadson has given his notice with the organization. He's moving back to North Carolina to be closer to his aging father after his mother passed.
Councilor Chenoweth.
Thank you, Mayor. Being on vacation, I don't have much to report other than I also thoroughly enjoyed myself at the active shooting. I actually got to be one of the bad guys in one of the scenarios. I won't expose how that all went down, but it was a good time. I found that when their fake gun-making noise device goes off, if you're within 6 feet without headphones, and you're me, you can clear about 12 inches by the startled reaction that you have to it. It was a great time. I was very impressed by what I watched. Thank you.
Councilor Cunningham.
I have no updates.
City Recorder Claudia Cisneros.
I have nothing to report.
Scott Burke, Information Systems.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of things from the IT side. We're starting to get some traction on our police project to get a Toughbook laptop officer or one single computer for every officer. We've got a few of them outfitted now. They're out in the field doing some warnings and citations, sending data back and forth to our police records and court programs. So we're going to keep working out the little bugs and keep things talking and bring more and more of those online over the next few months. And one other item, this Friday, the last Friday of July, is known as National System Administrator Appreciation Day, recognizing the IT professionals who keep organizations of all sizes up and running. So if you see one of our team around the city, well, thanks. They have like Parks Month and Public Works Month, and, we get a day sometimes.
And you deserve a day.
Yeah, you just see Lori, Megan, or Sean, give them a pat on the back and wish them a happy System Administrator Day. Thanks.
Thank you. Susan Muir, you're retired now. You don't get to talk yet. Jenny Berg, who's Library Director and Parks and Rec Director at this time.
Yes, and the Library and Parks and Rec staff have made it very easy for me to combine my reports because, as you know, they're working together hand in hand on all summer fun events. And I think that there would be a much larger audience here for the CPR bond conversation, except for the fact that they're all those people are listening to Johnny Limbo and the Lugnuts. It's possible that if we open the doors, we'd be able to hear little cheers or something. It looks like the most packed concert that we've seen yet with the many years of summer fun concerts. There's also lots of reading and playing and bookmobile and park play dates and youth and adult dodgeball and Dungeons and Dragons events all coming up in the next couple weeks, all free and available to all members of our community. This is thanks to the hard work by the Library and Parks and Rec staff. And I met today with some of the Parks and Rec staff, and they said that they are running, that in the community there's confusion about which staff person, which works for which department. And I think that's a fine and good thing, you know? They think Gina works for the library and also for the community center, and they think that, you know, Jackie works for the community center and also the library. And really what it is we all work for the city and we work for our community.
Perfect. Thank you. Are you filling in for Geoff over there?
Yes, I am. I got
Happy to have you
here. So for the engineering department, James gave me a list of a few items that they've been working on. The I&I project Chandler's Addition has been completed, and we're working through the one-year warranty period now. The Cypress and Fellows, they finished paving on Fellow Street for Phase 2 on the 15th. And while the subgrade was relatively good condition, they did find that the existing storm line running down Fellows, which is a 36-inch ADS pipe, double wall design, is starting to fail in that area. So they decided to cut short on some of the pavement work, knowing that they're going to have to go back in there and replace that line in the next 5 to 10 years, according to their estimates. ARPA Midtown Basin Stormwater Project, the new storm line passed the mandrel testing on July 17th, and paving is supposed to be happening this week in that area. The street pavement patching project wrapped up on the 17th with heat. Contractor had some problems with pavement actually setting up well, but they got it done and everything went well. Ultimately, contractor did a good job and finished the patches along 2nd Street, Baker Creek Road, and 2nd and Johnson Street. And James wanted to appreciate the patience from the community as they made a lot of these different repairs. And then Hillcrest Private Development Project, grading and retaining wall installation has now been authorized for both phases 7 and 8, and contractor has also responded appropriately to dust concerns by increasing water truck usage. That's engineering. Wastewater, we wrapped up our solids project. It's online. So far, all is working well. We have a couple of punch list items, some seal coat work is being done, and that will be wrapping up. Our master plan work has been at a bit of a pause for the last few weeks with several of the engineering firm on vacation and some of our bodies on vacation as well. So that's going to be picking up, and we should be getting a CIP list soon on what some of those projects will entail for our conveyance system. Other than that, that is all I have to report.
That was a lot. Thank you. Appreciate that. Chief Wood.
Good evening. As you already mentioned, we did our first iteration of our active threat training. We have another iteration of that coming up, so anybody on the council who was unable to attend the first go-round, you're still welcome to attend. Just please let me know and Claudia know as well so that we can make the arrangements to get you there. And there's a process to check in, so just let us know so that we can get you informed on how to do that. We had our first air show planning meeting of the season as we move forward to the air show coming to us the end of September. Full steam ahead on the air show, and we had, like I said, the first meeting with all the players at the table last week. Quick hiring update with the department. So last week we interviewed 7 people for the soon-to-be vacant captain position. Of those 7, we're going to move 4 of those folks forward into the next step of the process. As of today, the PD has 4 individuals who are now moved into the background portion of the hiring process. So positive movement on the hiring front. As Director Burke mentioned, he's working on the Panasonic Toughbook rollout for the department. He's also working on several other IT-related projects for the PD right now with the rollout of the new RMS system and some other things. So we have a lot of technology things going on over the PD, and we appreciate the support of IS.
You might want to send them some flowers on Friday.
Maybe. Well, I wouldn't want Scott to feel awkward if I send him flowers. The last thing to update on is our top 10 traffic crash location rollout has begun. We've started doing some enforcement at those locations using some grant funds from ODOT for traffic overtime for our staff. So we'll be tracking the progress of those enforcement efforts at those locations to see if we can't drive the number of collisions at those locations down. And we'll report back once we have some data to analyze.
Great, thank you very much. Jody, did you have something you wanted to say?
I do have a couple
Okay.
of items, Mayor and Council. I want to remind everyone that the 3rd Street demonstration block is still active. That's between Evans and Ford. We've had a lot of participation in the app, and we want to continue having people enjoy the proposed improvements. And want to shout out to Noel, who produced all of the marketing materials that you see down there. So it's really been effective. And secondly, I'd like to announce that we have a survey going for the Innovation Campus, now referred to as the McMinnville Landing. It's considered an online open house and survey, so it's an update for the community to see what the project is, where we are. And then the survey is really around the environment, what you'll see at the campus when it's built out. So we want the community to weigh in on some of those elements. You can go to the city's website, scroll down, there's a box that says Innovation Campus, click on that. It's the very top link there. It'll take you right to the survey. And again, a shout out to Noel, who helped develop that survey. I think it's a really effective tool in helping the community know more about the project. Thank you.
Okay, Heather, I'm going to jump over to Zoom real quick so I don't forget them. Noelle, she's our community engagement director. Right, I don't know if you're community engagement.
I don't know what's going on. Oh, no.
Do you want to try Katie and come back to you, Noelle? Okay, Katie, let's see if we can hear you.
Yes.
Finance.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I want to share something real quick. I'm just going to share my screen. This has to do with the comment earlier about credit cards. So I found out a little bit ago that we did not take credit cards in the finance department and was utterly appalled. So one of the projects that we just wrapped up and have gotten launched is to get a way for our citizens to make payments on invoices, on transient lodging taxes, through a portal. So citizens can now, go to government finance, and when you're on the finance page, there's now a tab that's called payment options, and you can click to pay online. And so if anyone gets an invoice from the city, or if they want to file your transient lodging taxes, you can click here, and then you just have to put in the invoice number, and you can pay online. So that's one project that we've been doing, is just trying to get kind of caught up with the times and make sure that we're offering ways for people to pay for things the way everyone else does around, and so they can pay with credit cards and pay online. We did also get a swiper, so if they do want to come in and pay through credit card, they can as well. We have someone there Monday through Thursday. We often have someone there on Friday. We just can't guarantee to have someone there on Friday, and the doors to City Hall are currently not open on Fridays. So we also, the other project that Finance has ongoing right now that's outside of the norm is the UNA budget, which is that transparency tool. If you'll recall, I had to get together with management and request a new implementer for us to sort of start again because we weren't happy with it. Things are going much, much better with the new implementer. We're moving much more quickly, but it means that our staff is in training hours a week. The idea being that we're trying to catch up on the last 6 months where we were spinning our wheels. But we are learning, it's like drinking from a fire hose. And it's amazing what the system is going to be able to do once we get through all of this training and everything that we're going through. So we're very hopeful to have, by October-ish, we should have something to show you. I'm really hoping a little bit before that, but that's taking a lot of our time, and the new budget next year will be in the new software. So we'll have a nice way to show it with lots of good visuals. And then other than that, finance is working on closing out the year. So a lot of working with departments, what's left that we need to be recorded back to fiscal year 25, as we're getting things in that were ordered before the end of the year, contracts that were performed but we hadn't yet gotten the invoice, those types of things. So a lot of work in finance just in closing out the last fiscal year. So we can get you those year-end financials and things like that that we're still waiting to close those out. And that's what we have for finance.
Great, thank you, Katie. Noelle, how are you doing now?
Okay, no echo?
Correct.
Can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Goodness. Okay, so just a couple of things to share with you all tonight. I've recently been working with MCM to rethink how we can be better partners in educating the public on city news. I had a great discussion with the executive director, Kyle, last week, and we spent some time actually brainstorming how we might work together. Like, for instance, when we create digital assets or videos, like those that we share on social media, how can those be used and shared directly with MCM's viewers, and really give us an opportunity to expand our reach with no additional charge to the city. Kyle stated that there was a great interest in city business and city council meetings in particular. We crunched some numbers together, and on average, we had about 290 unique views per meeting during the budget meetings. And depending on the topic, if we have some controversial topics that are being discussed at City Council, those numbers can skyrocket all the way up to 500 viewers, unique viewers, and for some of the more mundane topics, we're quite a bit lower than that. So kind of using this information, we thought, what can we provide during the City Council meetings that would be a benefit to our residents. So say we have a live survey or relevant information that directly relates to that city council topic. We can anticipate what those topics are by keeping an eye on the agendas and create, either graphics or some sort of pop-up that appears during the city council meetings with a QR code that leads folks directly to that information that will stream live on MCM's app. And we can expand our reach throughout the community that way. So I'm really excited for doing to that. Actually, I believe when this video is streaming tonight, there is the demonstration block video that I created with the QR code that then leads people to the virtual platform to see that proposed design. So I'm really excited to kind of explore this partnership and see what we can do there. We're really putting our heads together, Kyle and I, to increase our public engagement footprint. During our time together, actually, we discovered that combined through our digital platforms and our followers, we have an audience of about a little over 16,000 residents. Not that every single person is tuning in, of course, to City Council News or to City News, but it definitely gives us that opportunity to really reach a lot of folks here in McMinnville. The second item I have tonight for you is I just want to let everybody know here we are opening recruitment for several city committees beginning this Friday, including the McMinnville Urban Renewal Advisory Committee, the Affordable Housing Committee, the Historic Landmarks Committee, and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee. We are applying that new committee recruiting process that City Council adopted late last year, which including having those vacancies open for a minimum of 30 days and providing a digital and paper application for folks. So this was actually one process that I and the DEIAC had a heavy hand in advising and working towards what that policy looked like with the city attorney, really to help create a more accessible and transparent city committee recruitment process. So just wanted to share that. Those will be open this Friday and will be open for 30 days. And then Jody, I believe, already said that, but I was having some trouble with my internet there. So just a reminder that the Innovation Campus Virtual Open House and Design and Development Standard Survey is now live through August 8th. Please share with your networks if you're able to. You can find the virtual open house and survey, which is hosted on the city's iHeartMac platform. And that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to head back over to Heather Richards, Community Development Director.
Yes, thank you. Two things. We talked a little bit about this, but we will be hosting a developers meeting on August 12th, Tuesday, 7:30 a.m. at the Community Development Center. We're inviting all local developers and any out-of-town developers working in our community to participate. That will be a hybrid opportunity so people can come in person and also participate virtually. And our hope there is to have a discussion about what's working, what's not working in terms of our service delivery. I also always like to bring to you a project we're working on. So currently, we're working on what's called the Evergreen Hotel. It's a 5-story, 118-room hotel that's come into the planning department for design review under our 3 Mile Lane design review process, and they're getting ready for permitting on that. And that's over right next door to the Waves and Wings Water Park. So where the hotel was originally planned to be on that campus. And then we're in conceptual design discussions with a new housing project called Valley Vista. This is on the property that recently went through a rezoning process down there on Stratus Avenue on the far western edge of the southern side of Highway 18. There will be 5 residential buildings there, 96 units and a community clubhouse, and we're working through the design and site plan for that with the developer at this point as well.
Great. Oh, Heather, we have a question. Councilor Gary.
Do you have a current update on the TSP RFQ?
We are working internally with our partners on when to issue that. That date of issuance is out of my hands at this point in time.
Thank you, Heather. City Attorney David Lightberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I am just back today from about a week of vacation, so I don't have a lot to report on you for things that I've been working on except desperately trying to get through my inbox. I did want to inform you of a significant project going through my department over the next month. We are trying to put together some processes for dealing with an upcoming paternity leave that I'm going to be taking in September. I'm hoping for about 6 weeks, and I'm hoping to leave you in good hands.
Yes, congratulations. Interim City Manager and HR Director Vicki Hedges.
Well, David, thanks for stealing the spotlight there. Don't know how we follow that. Should have had him go last. But just a couple of updates for council this evening. Update on training numbers. We only have 15 employees that have not yet completed their training this year, so that's great. And we're following up with them to make sure that gets completed. Some of you may have seen my email notifying you that the Parks and Rec Director position was not filled through this last recruitment process. Once we have an interim city manager in place, we'll revisit that process and get started on that again. And then lastly, a project that I'm working on, working with Claudia to develop a volunteer handbook in the hopes of having a more coordinated effort for our volunteers across the city, making sure that we're tracking our volunteers, completing background checks and training as we're moving forward in a coordinated fashion. So that's all for tonight.
Great.
Mayor, one last thing. I thought Cord was going to remind everyone, but National Night Out is August 5th, 5 to 8, Discovery Meadows Park. We already have a quorum notice in case you all want to hopefully be there. So just a reminder.
Yes, we should all be there.
Thank you for having my back.
Great, thank you. And just, again, I want to say thank you to all of you for your staff reports. I think we learn a lot in those, so I appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. Consider resolution number 2025-41, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Newburgh Ford for the purchase of a 2024 F-550 Ford with, I don't know how to say that word, Skelzy? Is that right? Okay. Pretty good. Combo body. All right. I do have a question. So you have in here that you're buying the Newburgh Ford, taking the lowest bid, which is great, for $104,489.07. And that you state that you're buying the chassis?
That is correct.
Okay, so,
Ford, and then it'll go to the Newburgh Ford, will take it to the shop to put the box on.
okay, so altogether with the box and everything, you'll still be under your budget of $200,000? Okay, that was all I wanted to know. I did clarify that. Any other questions?
I do have a question.
Councilor Tukolsky.
Thank you for getting 3 quotes, by the way. I do appreciate that. It's not a lawnmower. The quote for Gresham Ford gives a 2026 F550, and Newburgh Ford gives one for 2024, so they're not exactly apples to apples. And the difference is $400 for a truck that's 2 years newer. Why are we not spending $400?
The challenge there is that those chassis aren't available, and it's questionable on when they will be available for
All right,
us to
that's all I need to know. Thank you, sir.
Perfect.
It makes sense.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to accept Resolution 2025-41?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Counselor Geary and a second from Counselor Payne. Claudia?
Counselor Chenoweth?
It's so weird to go first. Aye.
Counselor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham?
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky?
Aye.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
The consent agenda passes unanimously by a vote of 6-0.
Just so the audience understands why Chris said that, is it used to be we always went with the same person and took a vote. And I've asked our city recorder to every meeting switch that, so nobody has to go first all the time, last or in the middle. And sometimes you have to make a decision for yourself instead of what the guy in front of you did. So it just makes it a little bit fair.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes. I just wondered how long somebody would figure it out before. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Resolution 2025-20, a resolution adopting a building fee schedule and repealing all previous resolutions adopting building fee schedules on the effective date of this fee schedule. Heather Richards, get a call on you again.
Yes, Mayor and Councilors. So I don't have anything additional to report after the public hearing staff report, but happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Do we have any additional questions for? All right, do I have a motion to accept resolution number 2025-20?
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion from Counselor Geary and a second from Counselor Cunningham. Any additional comments? Claudia?
Counselor Chenoweth?
Nay.
Counselor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham?
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky?
Nay.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
Resolution 2025-20 passes by a vote of 4-2. 4 ayes and 2 nays.
Thank you, Claudia. Now we move on to resolution number 2025-40, a resolution to support 2 technical assistant grant applications to the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development for the purpose of supporting housing. I'd like to again call on Community Development Director Heather Richards, and I think we have Evan as well. Yep, right there.
Yes, so Mayor and Councilor, Evan Hippas, our Associate Housing Planner, will be presenting this resolution to you tonight.
Okay, Evan?
Yeah, thank you. So agenda item is for the consideration of Resolution 2025-40, which supports 2 technical assistant grant applications to the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development for the purpose of supporting state housing requirements and updates. So the grants for this biennium are due by August 4th, so it's coming up here pretty soon. And part of the grant requirements is that a letter of support or a resolution by a mayor or city council must be submitted to show support for the projects that are being proposed for grants. So the purpose for the technical assistant housing grants is really just the kind of unprecedented times that we are currently in relating to housing planning requirements and new housing laws that have implications on the ways that cities regulate our zoning and land uses, especially for housing developments. And so the state and DLCD has recognized the tall task ahead of cities and counties and is dedicating approximately $3.5 million over the next 2 years to fund support for technical support for housing updates. And primarily it's structured to help cities and counties bring on consultants to help with the work, to move that forward and maintain compliance with state laws. So kind of a recognition that, especially for smaller and medium-sized cities to keep up, it's kind of needing that extra support because we just don't really have the resources that larger cities do that might have staff dedicated to tracking legislative updates and kind of continually rewriting codes to maintain compliance with the updated laws. So I guess kind of to steal from Jody earlier, it's kind of we have the big city challenges and big city opportunities without always having those big city resources like a Portland might. So just kind of a quick overview of the two projects that are being proposed for grants. So the first one focuses on the implementation of the housing production strategy, which was recently locally adopted on June 10th. For that, the proposed grant is at $70,000, and the project would be taking place from kind of December 2025, January 2026 until May 2027. Just a bit of an update on that HPS process. So it was locally adopted on June 10th. DLCD has a public comment period that lasts until August 7th. And then the state also has until October 21st, so 120 days to review the HPS. But we are moving forward with this grant, which we had that input from our DLCD rep regionally, but it is still something we should take advantage of to implement the actions that are being proposed. So there were 16 actions over the next 8 years that were identified in the final HPS document to promote the affordability and availability of housing in McMinnville. And so this first project would be focusing on the implementation of 4 of those HPS strategies that were scheduled for the 2026-2027 years in that 8-year work plan. So there would be the 4 there identified through the HPS as number 5, which was implement and codify the Great Neighborhood Principles, so adopting clear and objective standards. Right now, the Great Neighborhood Principles are policies that are located in our comprehensive plan, but this number 5 focuses on the clear and objective standards to bring a little bit more of some enforcement to that when development is happening. Number 11 is partnering with community land trusts. Number 12 is pretty closely related to that, which is to evaluate supporting affordable housing development through land provision. And then number 15 was the implementation of a fee for demolition of existing affordable homes. So again, these are all actions that were a part of that adopted HPS and the ones that we had identified through our project advisory committee and through discussions with this city council and the planning commission as ones to prioritize earlier in that 8-year work plan. So then the second project relates more towards the overall recent state housing statutes and laws. It's a project proposal that we are requesting $185,000 and follows a similar timeline. So kicking off around December of this year and really continuing that work until close to May of 2027. So for context, in the past 5 years, I'm sure it's not too much of a surprise, but there have been a lot of updated state housing statutes that have gone into effect. Some of the topics that they relate to include middle housing, both for the land division and just expanded allowance of those housing types. Looking at things like needed housing and the siting requirements that go along with that. So for things like emergency shelters and affordable housing, a mandatory adjustment process to things relating to design and development standards, expedited permit review timelines for needed housing. And then one that's kind of coming soon that just passed this year is pre-approved building plan set. So trying to contemplate what that looks like for us to maintain compliance with those statewide pre-approved building plan sets and how we set up our process to be consistent with that. So again, this second grant project would really focus on a code audit, code amendments, and development process improvement measures to promote housing. And again, for both of these, the city would really be using the requested grant funds to be able to hire consultants to help us move forward with this important work. So yeah, in summary, why we're pursuing these and how they were kind of prioritized is supporting that mandated work, so both compliance with the state housing laws, then also the implementation of our HPS work plan. Also to support overall process improvements for the development and review process related to housing. And staff is preparing that both grant applications would be written for a full cost recovery of the consultant costs. And then it's identified the staff amount of time that's provided as an in-kind match to help us stay competitive and show the local commitment that we do have staff dedicated to help manage these projects with the consultants' help. Just for a little bit more information, which is also on the program webpage that I provided in the staff report, but just related to how cities or counties can choose to work with consultants. So if awarded these grant funds, the city would be able to contract with consultants to help the projects move forward. And cities can choose if they want what's called a direct grant or a DLCD provided consultant. So they really are setting this up in a way that there is options of how cities want to work with those consultant teams. The direct grant is what the city staff would recommend pursuing at this time and what we're planning on. So this requires the city to be project manager and do an RFQ to find the best consultant that's best suited to help us move forward and really understands what we're trying to accomplish here at the local level. And also for the city to negotiate that contract more directly. And I think really what the benefit to that one is it gives us a better opportunity to make sure that we kind of sign off or do that quality control on the deliverables. The other option that is available is the route that's the DLCD provided consultant. So basically they have a approved list that they're finalizing of consultants around the state that the state would directly kind of appoint or assign to a jurisdiction. But like I said, as of right now, staff is working on pursuing the direct grant to really make sure we have that kind of quality control component in these projects. So, and then just, yeah, the last thing I'll note is just that I think it's worth emphasizing that the planning division will need to accomplish this work whether or not the grant funding is awarded, which is why these projects specifically have been prioritized for the grant proposals for the next 2 years. So if the city does not pursue these grants, the entirety of the work would fall onto the current planning staff, which just for all of you to consider would limit the capacity to take on additional priorities that might be set over those next 2 years. So staff would be recommending a motion to move forward with this resolution so that we can hopefully unlock some of that grant funding that's become available for this specific work. And that's what I have. And myself or Director Richards can try to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a couple. So you have to, they're matching funds, you said. So is the matching funds in your current budget?
So it's,
yes. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Evan. So it's not matching funds required. It's more competitive if we can provide a match. And as Evan explained in his staff report, our intention is to provide staff hours in kind match and not hard dollars.
Okay.
We did remove this funding from our budget in the budget reduction process.
Okay. And so you had stated you had 8 years to get this accomplished, and these are the tasks that you're going to put on there. Does the staff have the time to do this? I just want to make sure that we're not putting more on your plate, that you do have, because this probably falls under your housing because you're the housing planner, correct? So
yes.
I know getting consultants is going to help you. I just want to make sure, even being in charge of the consultants, is that okay for what you have on your plate right now?
Yeah, so in that implementation schedule in the HPS, that's basically what we're going to be held accountable to through what is kind of being called just the housing program. So it is something that we're going to have to do regardless. And so it feels like, definitely something that's in my wheelhouse and falls within the responsibilities. And I definitely think having that additional help, especially with, I think it really is an efficiency. These consultants are working with a lot of different cities and might have more time to really look into the legislative updates. So some of that research, that kind of initial research time especially, feels like it's cut down, and we can, kind of get those summaries from them and really talk about what the implementation looks like based on McMinnville's community values here.
Okay, thank you, Evan. Any questions from any other counselors? Okay. Do I have a motion to accept resolution 20, where are we at? 2025-40, the resolution to support 2 technical assistant grant applications to the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development for the purpose of supporting housing.
So moved.
So I have a motion from Counselor Cunningham.
Second.
Second from Counselor Tukalski. Any additional comments or questions from the council? Claudia.
Counselor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Counselor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham?
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky?
Aye.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
And resolution 2025-40 passes unanimously.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Now we're going to consider resolution number 2025-42, a resolution authorizing the sole source procurement of kenneling services with homeward bound pets under ORS 2798.075. I'd like to call on Police Captain Tim Simons to present.
Actually, Mayor, I'm going to grab
You're
this
gonna do
one
it.
first. Thank you.
Okay.
And just to be clear, under ORS 279B.075, while at first glance this looks like a straightforward authorization of a contract, I just wanted to impress upon you that what you are doing by this resolution is authorizing a sole source procurement. You are making particular findings that require that this be a sole source procurement. Those are laid out here. And if you have questions about that in particular, that is why Captain Simons is here, so he can, in fact, help you understand those findings and what this needs to be in order to be a sole source procurement. If you have other questions about the contract, those of course are okay too. I just wanted to sort of put this disclaimer at the beginning so you understand exactly what you are going through.
Captain Simons, do you want to come up, please? So sole source procurement, so we're only going to use the one kennel services?
Correct.
And Homeward Bound in the past has had some issues with having available kennels. Will they have enough available kennels if they're the only one that we're going to use?
They still have the same issues with regards to kennel space. The reason that it's a sole source is because they accept all dogs, regardless of whether or not they're vaccinated or they have an owner. The majority of the dogs that we come across don't have an owner that we can identify at the time, and they also don't have vaccination records, which would be required at other kenneling sources within the city limits to take them to. We do have an agreement with Newburgh Animal Shelter to take them there in the event that Homeward Bound Pets is full. The issue that we run into there is generally they will not take vicious dogs, and we also run into a lot of vicious dogs when we're taking them in and placing them in kennels. So with the option with Homeward Bound Pets, they not only do they function within the city limits of McMinnville, so it makes it so that our officers are able to take the dogs to the kennel in a more easy fashion, quote unquote easy fashion, without having to drive to Newburgh or some other location. They also, as I stated before, they don't require to have the vaccination records initially once a dog's there, and they were willing to hold on to the dogs for for extended periods of time without vaccination records, especially if no owner comes forward. The additional thing to that is they also do the redemption services for the city, so it doesn't take any city staff to do the redemption process outside of them potentially getting authorization from me periodically if someone does not necessarily meet all of the listed out criteria to be vetted out.
We used to have guaranteed so many kennels. Is that still how it's going to be?
We do have a guaranteed 2 kennels per day that we pay for, whether we're using them or not.
Okay.
And then we also have overage kennels as well, which we don't pay for, but we do pay for them in the event that we use them. And they are at a slightly higher rate because they are kennels that they have set aside for us, but that eats into their ability to do their function of their nonprofit for other dogs.
I have one more question before I give it to Councilor Chenoweth. So it didn't say anything in here about the $40,000 where it's technically coming from. Is it within the budget that's approved for you?
Yes, ma'am. It's within the budget. Actually, it is slightly higher than what is in the budget, just due to the fact that there are overages that do occur periodically throughout the year, but we don't know how many there will be and how often that will take place. So to build in some sort of flexibility there, the budget's not being increased. It's just a request for the authorization of that dollar figure.
Okay. Councilor Chenoweth.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to draw a finer point, and I'm not wanting to put you on the spot, but I'm sure if I have this question, there are others that have the same question. So hearing the answer would be good for all of us. As I look at this packet, it says we've had this available to us since 2017.
Correct.
So in our recent events, there was no kenneling available. Why was the reason we couldn't have put those then at that time?
Are you referring to the wolf dogs?
Yes, sir.
Well, those are unique, to put it bluntly. They don't fall into the same category that a normal dog, quote unquote normal dog, would be as far as the kenneling options are available. I won't, unless I need to, go into the specifics as to why they need to be different, but there needed to be some differences as far as the overall kenneling is concerned for those specific dogs. In addition to that, we already had 2 dogs in 2 kennels during that time frame. Okay. And Homeward Bound Pets unfortunately did not have any overflow kennels available. As part of the contract, they have the ability to afford us those overflow kennels if they're available. But if they're not available, we cannot displace another dog.
And I would assume those types of dogs may or may not be not welcome at Homeward Bound Pets. Is that a...
They're not welcome at any kennel.
Okay.
And I made numerous calls.
Okay. I just, for the record, wanted everybody to hear that.
Appreciate
because
that.
They'd read that and they'd have the same question. Thank you.
Any additional questions from councilors? Okay, do I have a motion to accept, and I'm going to reread this because I had read the B improperly, a resolution authorizing the sole source procurement of kenneling services with Homeward Bound Pets under ORS 279B 075.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Payne, a second from Councilor Chenoweth. Any additional questions or comments? Claudia.
Councillor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Councillor Payne?
Aye.
Councillor Geary?
Aye.
Councillor Cunningham?
Aye.
Councillor Tukolsky?
Aye.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
Resolution 2025-42 passes unanimously vote of 6-0.
Wait a minute. Okay, yes, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong one. Thank you, Claudia. Now we're going to move on to consider resolution number 2025-43, a resolution authorizing staff to negotiate the terms of employment for the interim city manager. I'd like to call on Vicki Hedges, Human Resources Director and Acting City Manager, to present.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, we've completed a interview and selection process for the interim city manager. This resolution is designed to ask council to give authorization to myself and City Attorney David Leitenberg to negotiate an employment agreement with the selected candidate who is currently blank on the staff report and the resolution. But as you all know at this point, the selected candidate is Adam Garvin, so we would be filling that name in for the resolution.
Thank you. Do I have any discussion on the dais? Do I have a motion to consider resolution number 2025-43?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Counselor Payne and a second from Counselor Cunningham. Any additional comments? Claudia?
Counselor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Counselor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham?
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky?
Aye.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
Resolution 2025-43 passes unanimously by a vote of 6-0.
And I see that Adam Gardeman is in the room. Congratulations. Okay, so now we're going to consider resolution number 2025-43, a resolution.
44.
Thank you. I'm like, that's the same number. Okay. Resolution number 2025-44, a resolution calling a measure election to submit to the electors of the City of McMinnville, Oregon, of general obligation bonds to build a recreation center, update parks, senior center, and library. Call on Susan Muir, CPR, project manager, to present.
Mayor and councilors, this is your opportunity to decide whether or not you'd like to put this forward to the voters in November of 2025. If you'll allow me, on page 47 of the packet, I wanted to let you know we made a few cleanups to what you saw last week, and I'll walk you through those. They're very minor, but in the summary, in the second paragraph, we added the word capital before the word projects. And then we removed that R. So now that sentence reads, this measure authorizes 98.5 million principal amount of bonds for capital projects expected to include. So that's the first change that we made. The second is we capitalized city in two places in the following paragraph that starts since 2019, and then the final paragraph that says the city. Those are now capitalized. We added an S at the end of projects in the first line of the third paragraph. So now that reads, since 2019, the city has worked with the community to design the projects. And we did so at the next projects word as well. So the only other thing we did was a spelling error when I was on the fly in the room, and oversight is now correctly spelled in the proposed summary. You have enough space in here. If the aquatic/recreation is decided to be two words, you have enough room in there, so that fits. So this is the proposal that you all wordsmithed last week, and we would recommend that you approve this resolution.
Thank you. Any comments on the dais? Wow, I guess we did so good last week. Okay, do I have a motion to consider resolution number 2025-44?
So moved.
I have a motion from Counselor Geary.
Second.
I have a second from Counselor Cunningham. Again, any comments?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to express I will be voting yes on this, not because I think this is right-sized for our community, but that I think the voters deserve the opportunity to vote on what has been decided to this point. So I made that clear from the outset when we got to this point that I would support putting it on the ballot, and I will do so.
Any additional comments?
Yes.
Counselor Tukolsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm of the same opinion. While I may not necessarily agree with all of this, I would like to see a little more clarity around what's taking place with the existing facilities. And I know that it's real clear to a lot of people who have worked on this for a long time, but the city citizens don't really know what's going to be taking place. What's going to happen to our pool? What happens to our community center? Why are we going to buy a new elevator with the community center if we're just going to shutter the thing? There's a lot of unanswered questions, and that concerns me. So I, too, will be voting yes on this, and the reason is because, much like the city service fee should have went to the voters, it could have been voted on, and then it would have been, everyone could have got behind it. I want this to go to the voters and allow them to decide. Thank you.
Councilor Geary.
Yeah, I appreciate both the comments from you guys, and I think it reflects a good effort. I think it's sort of the support of this project has kind of been a microcosm of the support we've seen in the community. And I think as the community's leaders, we have a responsibility to do this. We've been working on this project, not exactly, but the early iterations of it for many, many years. We had a distinct need before the pandemic. We're due now for an investment. If you look back at the history of this community, projects like this are the occurrences where we come together and get together and we support these type of things. Police department, fire department, libraries, pools, this community has continuously supported this. In all the interactions I've had, there are good questions and there's good answers. There's things that we need to continue to answer, but ultimately there's appreciation and excitement for this, and I think the community at the very least deserves to be given the choice on this. So I look forward to joining you all and voting yes to this tonight.
Great, thank you. I also think that the voters need the opportunity to vote on this as well. I personally support the bond and hope that we can build everything that we want to with this. But I think it's up to the citizens to decide, and I'm glad that we're giving them the opportunity to do that. Anybody else? Okay. Claudia, time for a roll call.
Counselor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Counselor Payne?
Aye.
Counselor Geary?
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham?
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky?
Aye.
Council President Peralta?
Yes.
Resolution number 2025-44 passes unanimously by a vote of 6-0.
I'll now adjourn the City Council meeting at 8:57.
The 3rd Street Improvement Project is focused on enhancing safety, accessibility, and flexibility, all while preserving what makes downtown McMinnville special. Beginning June 27th, you can explore a demonstration block between Evans and Ford to get a first-hand look at proposed design elements. Tape and stencils will mark sidewalks, tree wells, and planter locations. Features designed to calm traffic, widen pedestrian space, and support outdoor activities. This project responds directly to community input. People ask for a downtown that works for all ages and abilities, supports local businesses, and accommodates events like Matte Fresco without losing its charm. The design will introduce a curbless street, improved lighting, and new grading to meet federal accessibility standards. Clearly defined walking, driving, and parking areas will allow the street to shift seamlessly between daily use and community gatherings. By scanning QR codes on site, visitors may access immersive 360-degree panoramas of the proposed design. From marked viewpoints, you'll be able to step into the reimagined streetscape and look around at new furnishings, trees, and features. We invite you to walk the block and explore the concept. We hope to see you there.